Chapter 3567. What did you see? For some reason, the purple forest guards all felt that His Highness's voice seemed to be suffused with a thick chill. They all shook their heads with a strong desire to live and said in unison, "This subordinate swears." This subordinate didn't see anything. Could they say that His Highness stood on a flower bud and was extraordinarily handsome, comparable to a flower? They obviously couldn't. If they wanted to live, they had to be smarter and learn how to keep their mouths shut. It would be best if they could be both blind and mute. Mo Lien glanced at them. With a flick of her sleeve, she swooped down from 100 meters in the air and landed firmly on her feet. When the purple forest guards saw this, they all jumped down in unison with His Highness. Hui Feng chuckled mischievously. When he saw Prince Mo turn to look at him, he awkwardly rubbed his nose. In reality, he didn't want to laugh. He just subconsciously chuckled. Oh no, would His Highness think that he was laughing at him? Hui Feng, didn't your Majesty say in your last letter that our wife bought an estate on Mount Heaven Saint? Take some people with you to dig it up later. What? Hui Feng wanted to cry but had no tears. He glanced at His Highness. Just how much of a person did this lord like to seek revenge for the smallest grievance? Your Highness, this subordinate swears that I definitely wasn't laughing at your beauty earlier. After Hui Feng finished speaking, he suddenly discovered that the air had quieted down. He stiffly turned his head and saw that the purple forest guards were all looking at him like he was a corpse. He instantly wanted to cry but had no tears. 3 months. Mo Lien tossed down this isolate before ignoring our dear Hui Feng with a bitter expression. With a wave of his hand, the enormous ink-colored lotus flower that pierced the sky and earth slowly shrunk until it was the size of a small flower and directly disappeared between his brows. Mo Lien turned to look ahead and summoned 7th Yen with an icy gaze. Her finger moved slightly forward. Over there. 7th Yen whistled, and the golden dragon swept Mo Lien up with a sweep of its tail. The human and dragon traveled against the wind, and it was as if countless raging wind ghosts were brushing past them. However, to them, it didn't affect them at all. Mo Lien waved her hand and a sword appeared in her hand. A thick sword intent instantly flew out from the sword, creating a buzzing sound as it rubbed against the violent wind. Like a primordial force that tore apart the heavens and earth, this perfectly straight sword intent slashed towards the center of the zombie horde with an invisible force that could destroy heaven and earth. The sound of a sudden explosion rang out among the group of corpse puppets. Chu Qingfei, who was sitting in the middle of the earth spirit formation, was shocked. He couldn't escape in time and was hit on the back by a sword intent. His physical body instantly disintegrated, while his soul attached itself to a blood-stained jade talisman and suddenly burrowed into the ground with a squeak. Mo Lien seemed to sense something and looked down. However, at this moment, the thick dust was billowing, making it impossible to clearly see what was inside the destroyed Earth spiritual arrayed disc in the center of the zombie horde. However, Yen Qi sensed something very keenly. Master, the arrayed disc has been broken, but the person in the arrayed disc has escaped. His body has died and his soul has escaped. Mo Lien nodded with an indifferent expression. Suddenly, as if he had sensed something, he looked down. Sand and pebbles flew up under her feet, and all the earth and stones seemed to be sucked into the broken arrayed disc, accompanied by waves of roaring corpse puppets. The earth trembled. The Earth's spiritual arrayed disc began to disintegrate, sucking in everything nearby. Chapter 3568. Mo Lien's expression changed. He was currently standing above the damaged formation disc, so he was naturally at the center of this sandstorm. Hence, he promptly recalled 7th Yen, but he was already uncontrollably sucked into the center of the formation disc. Hui Feng and the others naturally turned pale with fright. However, They were still quite a distance away from the center of the formation disk, so by the time they rushed over, they saw that His Highness the Crown Prince had already disappeared from the center of the broken formation disk. Even the corpse puppets in the vicinity were all swept away. Your Highness. Everyone's expressions changed drastically. Mai Chiao's section break. When Arbor finished drawing the last batch of jade talismans on Fish Orchid Planet, she discovered that it was already close to noon. Kai Xiu pushed open the door and entered before bowing to her. The carriage is ready. Crown Princess, shall we set off now? Arbor nodded, a cold smile flitting across her lips. How is the page boy outside? Kai Chi, who had followed her in, covered her mouth and giggled. He's about to peel off a layer of skin from the sun. He's showing signs of getting heatstroke, so someone helped him to the side to rest. How loyal and devoted. Arbor shook her head expressionlessly and got up to walk out the door. She had already explained the situation to her parents yesterday, so she didn't go to bid farewell today. In any case, she didn't need to stay in the Mu residence for long. She would leave after getting what she deserved from Morning Sun Pavilion. Now, she was increasingly hostile toward the Mu family, and she didn't have any favorable impression of them at all. She kept feeling that everyone in the Mu family, from top to bottom, was adept at scheming and wore a mask to conduct themselves. Just like that seemingly benevolent old lady. How could she abandon a granddaughter she had been with for so many years just like that? Arbor got into the carriage and sat there by herself, shaking her head slightly as if she had thought of something. The carriage drove out of Changle Avenue and headed toward Winter Moon Mountain Forest in the west. People came and went along the way, and the streets and alleys were filled with the cries of peddlers. Arbor had spent 6 days and 6 nights drawing talismans on Fish Orchid Planet. He had basically finished drawing all the blank talismans that he could draw in the end. She seemed to have arrived at the Great Vacuum Realm. In the end, she seemed to have gathered the power of heaven and earth and drawn a Saint-grade golden talisman with the help of the gods. This was a Saint-grade golden talisman summoning talisman. This was the first time she had successfully drawn a Saint-grade golden talisman in her entire life. At that time, she had decisively put away the sacred grade golden talisman and stepped out of the Fish Orchid Planet. As expected, she had attracted a bolt of lightning. And it was still a small lightning strike. The lightning flashed and the thunder rumbled. It looked ferocious and lasted for a long time in the sky. However, when it came down to strike her, it seemed to be very weak. Speaking of which, she seemed to have gone crazy yesterday. She had drawn so many talismans and only rested for less than 4 hours. Now, she seemed to be a little drowsy. Xiaomu simply took a thin blanket and lay down to sleep for a while. When the carriage stopped in front of the Mu family's house, they suddenly heard a clang. An arrow with the word Lin carved on the tail of the arrow happened to be stuck in the window of Arbor's carriage. The tail of the arrow trembled slightly. This sound naturally woke up the little crown princess who was sleeping soundly. She raised her head, and her eyes instantly became clear. A pair of fierce eyes suddenly shot out through the curtain of the window. Who dares to disturb the crown princess? Kai Xiu scolded and jumped out of the carriage. Chapter 3569. In front of the Mu family's spacious mountain gate, more than a dozen people in tattered clothes ran out as if they were fleeing. Their expressions were panicked, and their eyes were filled with terror. Each and every one of them ran for their lives, and some even bumped into carriages and fell to the ground. Their heads and faces were covered in blood from the fall, but they couldn't care too much as they got up and continued running. Screams of alarm could be heard everywhere. Arbor came out of the carriage, her eyes slightly narrowed as she looked at the chaotic scene in front of her. Kai Xiu hastily grabbed a weary older sister and asked in bewilderment, "This older sister, what happened?" "Ah!" That older sister hastily flung Kai Xiu's hand away and continued running forward crookedly. Several arrows suddenly shot out from behind her, flying towards the crowd of people. Arbor's expression turned grave, and she threw out several golden needles with a flick of her hand. After several ding-ding-ding sounds, those pursuing arrows were all struck down to the ground by the golden needles. Big Sister Moo, not a single one of your 3 arrows hit their mark. Laughter was heard, and it was soon followed by the voices of many young people jeering together. Prince Linchuan's vassal prince's arrow is extremely domineering. Tisk, but didn't it still miss? Playful laughter followed. A group of men and women, about a dozen of them, followed the laughter and chatter as they walked over. Xiao Mu naturally recognized the youth leading that group of youths. It was the second branch's proud son of heaven, Mu Erkshu. 7th Miss Mu Ruian was standing beside Mu Erkshu. Upon seeing Arbor standing in front of the carriage, Mu Ruian immediately pursed her lips and tugged at her older brother Mu Erkshu's sleeve, muttering something softly. Mu Erkshu looked towards Arbor and nodded politely. He walked over first and cupped his hands, saying, "We didn't know that the Crown Princess would suddenly grace us with her presence. We were playing archery just now and accidentally startled the Crown Princess. May the Crown Princess forgive us." Arbor's gaze swept over, and she couldn't help but frown. Apart from some Mu family descendants, there were also many other patrician families' descendants among the young men and women present. For example, the Qin family's 5th Qin and 9th Qin young master were standing not far behind. There was also a young man who was called the Crown Prince of Linchuan. He was also looking at her curiously. Lord Linchuan had lived in his fief for a long time. Arbor had heard about his son's return to the capital 2 days ago, but he didn't have the patience to deal with it. Now that she suddenly saw the heir of the Prince of Linchuan, Xiaomu also curiously sized him up a few times. This young lad was quite good-looking. He had inherited the Mo family's tradition and was quite handsome. Unlike that brat Mo Kuan, who had a hideous appearance. This person was pleasing to the eye, but the arrogance between his brows imperceptibly seeped out, causing Xiao Mu to shift her gaze away after sweeping a glance at him. While they were talking, the beggars in tattered clothes who were running around were yelled at by more than a dozen family guards and escorted back. Every one of them had some injuries on their bodies and faces. They looked at the Linchuan Crown Prince's group in horror, as if they were looking at demons. "What is this for?" Arbor asked calmly with a trace of cold indifference in her eyes. "These are merely a bunch of beggars living on the streets. We invited them over to eat and drink, so they naturally have to make us happy. Isn't this very fair?" Chapter 3570. The one who spoke was a young lady from an aristocratic family. Her voice was incomparably arrogant, her eyes slanted upwards, and her nose wrinkled from time to time as she spoke. It was as if the lives of these beggars were as lowly as dog poop on the roadside in her eyes. She could trample on them wantonly and play with them as she pleased. "Who are you?" Arbor asked coldly. Mu Erkshu was an intelligent person. Even though he hadn't interacted much with the young Crown Prince Consort, he already knew the young Crown Prince Consort's temperament after a few short interactions and understanding of her. Looking at her expressionless face, she looked calm on the surface, but her heart was most likely surging with anger. Mu Erkshu hurriedly tried to smooth things over. "Crown Princess, please calm down. This is the young lady of the Lin family of Rong City. The Lin family is proficient in the study of arrays and is one of the top aristocratic families in Rong City." Arbor glanced at Mu Erkshu coldly. This glance made Mu Erkshu inexplicably unable to continue speaking. Lin Miao knitted her delicate brows and said with an indifferent expression, "These people should know that if they want to get anything, they have to pay a price, don't they?" "Kai Xiao," the little Crown Princess said coldly. Kai Xiao immediately responded and walked forward. When she arrived in front of Lin Miao, she slapped her fair face without saying a word. Following the crisp sound of the slap, everyone could not help but be stunned. Kai Xiu said with a calm face, "You have no manners. If you want to talk to the crown princess, you have to kneel down first." Lin Miao was so angry that her whole body trembled. A trace of anger suddenly appeared in her beautiful eyes, and she raised her hand to slap Kai Xiu's face. As a daughter of the Lin family, she had never suffered such humiliation in her life. When she lived in Rong City in the past, everyone in Rong City, including the city lord, was respectful to the Lin family and did everything they could to curry favor with them. It had only been 2 or 3 months since she moved to Longyan City, but she did not expect to suffer such humiliation. How could Lin Miao endure this anger in her heart? However, before her little hand could touch Kai Xiu's cheek, her wrist was struck by a golden needle. Lin Miao's fingers went numb, and her entire arm fell limply to her side. A trace of fear appeared in her eyes. "Sister Miao, A familiar voice made Arbor look over. She saw Lu Yiran holding Lin Miao's arm with a pained expression. Seeing this motley crew, Arbor felt annoyed for no reason. He said coldly, "Tie them up." 2 purple forest guards darted out from behind her with a whoosh. They grabbed Lin Miao's arms from both sides and pushed her in front of the young crown prince consort. Mu Erkshu hurriedly came out to smooth things over. "Crown princess, I'm afraid this isn't very appropriate." In any case, she was the eldest young miss of the Lin family in Fuzhou City. If she was bullied in the Mu family's territory, who knew how the Lin family would come looking for trouble with the Mu family? Mu Ruian couldn't help but cry out, "Crown princess, what are you doing? Don't you like to play archery games? Then I, the crown princess, will play with you." Arbor's cold gaze swept over everyone present, and she waved her small hand slightly. The purple forest guard immediately understood. He released Lin Miao's arm and pushed her forward heavily, berating, "Why aren't you running?" At this moment, an exquisite purple bow had appeared in the young crown prince consort's hand. As spirit energy seeped into it, the small bow in her hand grew in the wind, and with a whoosh, it became the size of a normal bow. Chapter 3571. The arrowhead was aimed at Lin Miao's pale face. Everyone was taken aback and looked at Arbor with an incredulous expression. The crown princess was actually aiming her bow at Miss Lin. Seeing that Lin Miao didn't react, Arbor released the arrow, and like a gust of wind chasing the moon, it directly shot towards Lin Miao's heart. "Sister Miao!" Lu Yiran covered her mouth and screamed. This scream made Lin Miao recover from the shock, and hurriedly dodged to the side. But as soon as she moved, she found that her cultivation seemed to be suppressed. Her movements were slower than usual, and the arrow brushed past her shoulder and nailed to the trunk behind her. The tree trunk swayed slightly, and suddenly the entire tree fell backwards, crashing to the ground with a loud crash. It was obvious that the little crown princess arrow was not just for show, but really wanted to take her life. "You!" Lin Miao was anxious and angry, her face flushed red. She covered her soft and bleeding arm with one hand and hurriedly turned around and ran out of the Mu family's mountain gate. This crown princess was simply a lunatic. A wise man knows when to retreat. At this time, she ran home first and let her father come and reason with the Mu family. "Running so slow, you really want to die." Arbor coldly shouted, and the second arrow followed the clouds and moon, shooting towards Lin Miao's back. Lin Miao glanced back, and when she saw the arrow coming straight at her, her whole person was frightened. She quickly twisted the defensive ring on her hand. The second arrow was blocked by the defensive shield, and with the force of the arrow hitting her back, she fell forward a few meters away, a trace of blood oozing out of her mouth. She was serious. Was the crown prince consort crazy? She really wanted to kill her, Lin Muir, with an arrow. Lin Muir ran a few more steps forward, and her whole person almost stumbled to the ground. However, at this moment, the third arrow had already caught up, shooting straight over her head and shooting down a big tree in front of her. Lin Muir watched the big tree crash to the ground, blocking her way, and her whole little face was almost pale. As soon as she turned around, she was horrified to find that the little Crown Princess' fourth and fifth arrows had already caught up to her. The fifth arrow chased after the tail of the fourth arrow, directly splitting the fourth arrow in half, passing through and shooting straight between her eyebrows. Crown Princess! Crown Princess! Mu Erkshu, Linchuan Wang Shitzi, and the others all cried out in surprise. Wouldn't this arrow between Lin Muir's life? Lin Muir's legs went soft and she fell to the ground. She opened her mouth and cried. She had really lost all her face today. The little Lin Muir, and, the whole arrow, the whole arrow, the whole arrow. Lin Muir's, the crown princess, and leaning against the tree Mian by, and, of, she was. Crown Princess. You're too much, aren't you? Mu Ruian cried out in exasperation. You're too much of a bully. Louis Ran hurriedly rushed over, reaching out to help Lin Muir, who was hugging her knees and crying bitterly, up. She also shouted, Crown Princess, what are you doing? How can you bully people like this? So what if I bully you? The little Crown Princess walked over to them with an indifferent expression. Chapter 3572. In your eyes, these beggars are nothing more than the mud beneath your feet, ants that you can bully at will. But in my eyes, you are nothing but ants. I'm just an ant. I can do whatever I want, isn't that so? The young Crown Prince Consort clapped her small hands twice. Someone, come and round them up. Today, this Crown Princess will also learn from their horse riding game and shoot beggars. I'll have a good time with them. Yes. The purple forest guards mounted their horses. As the hooves of the horses trampled on the ground, dust flew everywhere. The soldiers urged their horses to encircle the outer circle, blocking the crowd of panicking noble ladies and noble sons at the foot of the Mu family's mountain gate. Everyone couldn't help but gasp in shock. Mu Erkshu cried out, Crown Princess, you're too, Arbor tossed a bow to Prince Linchuan's heir. Prince Linchuan, are you interested in dueling with this Crown Princess? Prince Linchuan's face was completely stupefied. Before this lord came to the capital, he had been warned not to ever confront the little fiend Crown Prince Consort. Otherwise, you'll definitely not be able to bear the consequences. He didn't expect to meet her for the first time in less than 2 days after arriving in the capital, under such circumstances. He really didn't want to offend the Crown Princess. Now that the young Crown Princess had issued an invitation, how could he possibly dare to accept? Shaking his head repeatedly, Prince Linchuan hastily said, Sister-in-law, sister-in-law. No, this younger brother naturally wouldn't dare to fight with sister-in-law. If this little brother has done anything inappropriate, I hope that sister-in-law will forgive this little brother on account of this little brother's youth and ignorance. The young Crown Princess coldly swept a glance at him and pointed a finger at him. I will tell His Majesty everything that happened today. Just you wait. You've completely disgraced the Missouri estate today. If I were your father, I would personally deal with you and give you a good beating. That way, you won't always be with a bunch of wastrels and go astray in the future. Student Imo Su almost burst into tears. He didn't know how the purple forest guards had brought him out. Following that, all the noble ladies and nobles on the field panicked as they ran around frantically in the Crown Prince Consort's archery game. Qin Jiu was also on the verge of crying, and he dragged his fifth brother to run towards the edge while repeatedly calling out, "Crown Prince Consort, Crown Prince Consort. Fifth brother, and I didn't do anything just now. We didn't shoot those beggars. Crown Princess." Sob Chinjo felt that he really had 8 lifetimes of bad luck. Today, he was only invited by Mu Erkshu to drink, but in the middle of drinking, Lin Myoer suddenly suggested playing some archery game. Fifth brother didn't know martial arts, so he had been standing next to fifth brother to protect him, lest a stray arrow hit his fifth brother. He didn't expect to be treated as an accomplice by the crown princess now and be forced to leave the stage together with her. Sob. He was Duan Yu's good friend. Weren't the young crown princess and Duan Yu good friends? He thought that based on this relationship, he and the young crown princess could be considered good friends. Fifth young Master Qin was also looking at the little lady with a complicated expression. She was so ruthless, and those arrows she shot were indeed aiming to take someone's life. If it weren't for the fact that these young masters and misses didn't have a few life-saving spirit weapons on them, they would probably be strewn with corpses by now. Chapter 3573. Fifth young Master Qin felt that he truly couldn't understand the young lady before him. If you say that she loves money, she can return all the gifts she sent back without saying a word. Say that she was heartless and callous, but she could stand up for beggars and teach these patrician families' young masters and young misses a lesson. He truly couldn't understand this young lady, not at all. He was about to be confused by himself. Approximately 15 minutes later, Mu Jingfeng rushed over upon hearing the news and hastily stopped them. At this time, the young men and women on the field were more or less injured. Some were bruised and swollen from the fall, some had arrows pierced through their arms or buttocks, and some had broken legs and arms. At this moment, they were all clutching their wounds and groaning pitifully. "Crown Princess! What are you doing?" Mu Jingfeng couldn't resist bellowing angrily. For such a thing to happen at his Mu family's doorstep, it wouldn't be something to be proud of no matter what if word got out. Arbor coldly glared at him and directly put away the bow in his hand. He waved his hand and said, "You came at the right time. Lead the way to Morning Sun Pavilion." Her goal for this trip was Morning Sun Pavilion, so why would she waste her breath on them? Mu Jingfeng practically flew into a rage on the spot when he saw her contemptuous attitude and simply didn't place him, her father, in her eyes. Although you're the crown princess and have a noble status, don't forget that you're also the Mu family's daughter. Shut up. Arbor promptly bellowed without giving face. That icy expression caused Mu Jingfeng's entire body to tense up. This daughter truly wasn't of one mind with their Mu family. Weren't you the one who wrote a letter for me to come to Morning Sun Pavilion? Why are you spouting so much nonsense now that I'm here? Arbor. Don't go overboard. How has the family wronged you? For your sake, we've already dealt with Mu Rochuan. Dealing with Mu Rochuan is your Mu family's matter. What does it have to do with me? Arbor coldly interrupted Mu Jingfeng's words. With a stern expression, she impatiently said, "Don't put the life and death of some cat or dog on this crown princess' head. Don't think that I'll be grateful to the Mu family just because I'll punish Mu Rochuan when I come back. On the contrary, this will only show me your selfish, hypocritical, disgusting, and heartless face." Mu Jingfeng was so infuriated by the little fella's scolding that his entire body trembled uncontrollably. He stammered "you" for a long time but was unable to utter a single word. As the daughter of your Mu family, once you no longer have any value, you will be mercilessly abandoned. Arbor looked at the man in front of him indifferently, his eyes full of disdain. Mother must have been blind to choose a man like you. In his fury, Mu Jingfeng threw a slap at Arbor's face. How could Xiao Mu be struck by his slap? With a twist of her body, her small fist directly bombarded Mu Jingfeng's face in a fit of rage. Bang! Mu Jingfeng crossed his fists in front of his eyes and blocked Arbor's fist. The father-daughter pair stood firm and did not move an inch. While the father-daughter pair was cursing at each other until they made a move, the hundreds of people in front of the Mu family's mountain gate all fell silent. Even though there were many onlookers, no one dared to make a sound. "Do you think I'm my mother who will resign herself to adversity?" Arbor bellowed furiously. Chapter 3574. If you dare to lay a hand on me, I'll let you drown in a pond and dismember your corpse. You'll die without a burial ground. Everyone was dumbstruck. Mu Jingfeng sucked in a breath of cold air and roared, "Unfilial daughter." At this moment, the Mu family's mountain gate was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. Even Mu Ruian and the rest were completely stupefied. They never thought that there would really be a girl in this world who dared to lay a hand on her father. In everyone's eyes, the little crown princess in front of them was simply insane. "Who admitted that you're mine?" Arbor coldly looked at Mu Jingfeng, who was panting from his anger, and swept him a disdainful glance. "Want to be my father? Not just any random cat or dog on the street has that qualification. I'm only here to get my prize today. I'll leave once I'm done. Don't talk nonsense and lead the way." Right now, she no longer had any favorable impression of the Mu family. Especially after they dealt with Mu Rochuan and schemed to take credit for it in front of her, she had lost the last trace of warmth toward the Mu family. Mu Qingya, who heard the news, hastily ran out and ran to the red-eyed Mu Jingfeng. She hastily said, "Lord, let's talk things out. The crown princess is still young and impulsive. Could it be that Lord can be as impulsive as her?" Mu Jingfeng was truly about to explode from anger today. This daughter of his was truly a jinx. She came back this time just to get her prize and didn't have the slightest bit of intimacy or reverence toward him, her father. How could he have such a heartless and unfeeling daughter? Was this really Long Chuyun's daughter? Long Chuyun appeared unyielding, but her temperament was the best. Normally, she wouldn't get into any disputes with others, but this daughter? She was simply a natural troublemaker. Arbor turned to look at the huddled beggars and instructed the purple forest guard, "Send these people down the mountain." "Sister-in-law, I'll send them off." Prince Lingchuan's heir had long turned pale from fright. He promptly volunteered to make up for his mistake. Arbor looked at him coldly. Mo Su only felt that that gaze was like the water of a cold pond, the depths of an icy spring, so cold that it made one's heart tremble uncontrollably. I promise that he and the others will be fine." Fifth young Sir Qin left with Mo Su with a complicated expression. Even now, he still couldn't understand the young crown princess. Call her cold and resolute, but she was so kind to some beggars whom she had never met before. You can say that she's kind, but she's so cold and murderous towards her own father. Although the crown princess was young, she was an exceptionally difficult person to read. Arbor turned around and walked towards the Mu clan's mountain gate. "Lead the way." "My lotuses section break, dong dong, dong dong." Mo Lien knocked on the seeping mountain wall beside her. As she walked, she kept picking up the crystal cores on the ground. He along with him, a large number of corpse puppet cores were sucked into the ground by the formation plate. However, it was unknown where the corpses of the corpse puppets had gone, or if they were buried by the soil. In any case, it would be a waste not to pick them up. Mo Lien thus walked forward, picking up the large pile of crystal cores on the ground while she was at it. Previously, when they were fighting with the zombie horde, no one had time to pick up the crystal cores. Now, the crown prince had benefited for nothing. Stepping on the rippling rocks, Mo Lien hadn't walked for long when she heard a woman's pained voice. Prince Mo narrowed his eyes, and he raised his hand to fling out a concealed weapon. Who cared if she was a human or a ghost, he would nail her without a second word. Chapter 3575. With a soth sound, the penetrating bone nail flew out from his fingertips. It disappeared into the end of the long stone wall. Ah! After a scream, the woman's broken and pained voice also disappeared. Prince Mo casually threw out a golem, took out a black stick, and poked the golem's shoulder. Go, Tu, scout ahead. That golem called Tu was a bit dim-witted. When it heard Crown Prince Mo's command, it walked forward clumsily and staggered along the stone that was flowing with a trickle of water. Prince Mo followed behind Tu, took out a winter fruit from his inner world and took a bite. Needless to say, after a day of torment, his stomach was empty. Even Mo Lien was feeling a little hungry. He casually ate 2 or 3 winter fruits to fill his stomach, and followed Golem 2 to the turn in the tunnel. This was a long underground tunnel. Other than the stone walls on both sides, there were only rugged stones under their feet. Underground water came out from the cracks of the stones, so when they walked, they were always dripping with water. Fortunately, the soles of his boots were quite thick, otherwise, they would have been soaked by the water. Prince Mo kept the crystal nuclei along the way, filling up more than half of the space in an empty purple storage talisman. In the future, there would be enough crystal nuclei to increase the efficacy of the medicine. He thought in his heart, and slowly came to a stop. That golem number 2 stood in front of him in a daze. Without Mo Lien's instructions, he didn't move and just stood there foolishly like a wooden blockhead. Looking from where it stood, there were a few drops of fresh blood on the ground, which had not been completely soaked by the trickling water. The water on the stone wall formed a natural small water screen. There should be a small stone cave inside. The view was blocked by the water screen, and looking in, it was pitch black. Mo Lien did not plan to take the risk, but used the little black stick to poke the golem's waist. Go in and see who is there pretending to be ghosts. The golem strode over, and not long after, a woman's scream could be heard. Mo Lien frowned and took 2 steps back. Not long after, Golem 2 came out of the small cave with a woman with disheveled hair in its hand. Ah! Ah! The woman's cries suddenly stopped, and she changed into a pleasantly surprised tone. She shrieked, "Your Highness, Your Highness!" Mo Lien glanced at that woman with disheveled hair that concealed her true appearance. He simply didn't know who she was. However, Prince Mo recognized the bone-piercing nail on the woman's left shoulder. Brother Duan Yu's famous work was a bone-piercing nail that injured his tendons and bones for half a month. Oh, it turned out that the penetrating bone nail had hit this woman. Prince Mo did not feel guilty at all. He shouted at Mechanical Puppet 2, "Throw her away and let's go. Don't pick up all the trash from him." He still had to find his way back, so he didn't have time to talk nonsense with some random people. Your Highness. Your Highness." However, the woman who was thrown to the ground by the golem suddenly crawled up and scrambled toward Mo Lien's feet. Before her claws could reach Mo Lien's legs, His Highness the Crown Prince abruptly kicked her in the chin. This was truly tragic. After a faint crack, the woman wailed and clutched her face in so much pain that she could barely speak. Chapter 3576. Prince Mo glanced at her angrily. She could only blame herself for throwing herself at his feet. She was simply crazy. He hated being touched by some strangers the most. She looked dirty and ugly, so how could she have the nerve to throw herself at him? Mo Lien harumphed. He didn't even spare that woman a glance out of the corner of his eye as he walked around that small water screen and followed after her. The rocky road began to wind upwards, leading to an unknown place. This underground must have been hollowed out by the people of Tianyun to make a stronghold. The array above was most likely a protective array, used to prevent strangers from breaking in. Your Highness, I am Susu." Shani Su covered her face and turned around, but she saw that there was no one behind her. His Highness the Crown Prince had already walked away with the wooden mechanical man. Shawnee Sue could not help but feel angry. She had traveled extensively and met so many people, but she had never seen someone like the Crown Prince of Shenzhou, who did not give her any face. Shawnee Sue could not help but feel angry and unwilling. She raised her hand and clenched her teeth, wanting to remove the bone nail from her shoulder. After she was sucked down by the array disc, her whole body fell on the pile of stones, and her whole body was in pain. Just as she was groaning in pain, a hidden weapon came flying out of nowhere and nailed her on the shoulder. She was shocked and scared, thinking that there was an enemy hiding in the dark, so she hurriedly dragged her body into the small stone cave behind the water curtain, intending to treat the various small wounds on her body. However, she did not expect that before she finished treating, she was pulled out of the small stone cave. She was really unlucky to have met such an unromantic man. She wanted to delicately seek protection and help, but her chin was almost broken by the man. She felt that there was no place on her body that did not hurt. She must first use medicine to treat the injuries on her body. Shawnee Sue took out 2 healing pills from her inner world and swallowed them. She also took out a medicinal herb, rubbed it in her hand, and then applied it to the small wounds on her body. These superficial wounds were easy to treat, but the bone nail on her shoulder was very difficult to remove. She had already tried to retrieve it for herself earlier, but unfortunately, she did not succeed. Firstly, her head was lowered, so it was difficult for her to move with one hand. Secondly, the penetrating bone nail was very strange. Once it was nailed into the skin, it was useless to forcefully pull it out. There were dark hooks hanging around the concealed weapon, which were sucked into the depths of the flesh. If he were to use force, he would only tear off an entire piece of flesh, making him suffer unspeakably. Shawnee Sue tried 2 more times and could only give up temporarily. After all, it was not very convenient for her to treat his wound with her head lowered. However, if this concealed weapon was left in his skin, it would easily cause his skin to fester. At that time, if he wanted to take it out again, it would be extremely painful. His Highness the Crown Prince is so cruel. Shawnee Sue stamped her feet. After hastily treating her wound, she hurriedly ran after Mo Lien. After chasing for about half an hour, they finally caught up with Prince Mo, who had stopped at the end of the road. "Your Highness." Shawnee Sue's expression did not change, but her heart was slightly happy. A man and a woman alone in a room, how could she cultivate some feelings with His Highness? Shawnee Sue was about to reach out to touch his back, but she saw Prince Mo, who was originally standing in front of her. Chapter 3577. It dissipated like an illusory smoke. This caused Shawnee Sue to be slightly stunned. When she turned her head to look, she saw that there were 4 forks in the road in front of her. There seemed to be a trace of Prince Mo's figure at each intersection. But when she reached out and touched it, it dispersed into the wind like a cloud of mist. Not even a trace of his aura could be found. Shawnee Sue looked at everything in front of her with a stupefied expression. She couldn't help but feel a trace of bitterness in her heart, as well as a monstrous wave of anger. This Crown Prince Lien was really ruthless. In order to prevent her from figuring out which path he took, this guy actually used such a mean method. He spread out a bit of divine sense at each intersection. It felt like every path had his aura, but Shawnee Sue couldn't figure out which path he took. In this way, she couldn't determine where he went, let alone which path he took to chase after him. This man was simply hateful. Shawnee Sue couldn't help but bite her pearly white teeth. Could it be that she was so disliked by others? This Prince Mo didn't hesitate to do so many things in order to deceive and mislead her. Was she so hard to accept and loathed? A trace of anger appeared in Shawnee Sue's heart, but it was more resentment. She also inexplicably felt a trace of jealousy towards the little crown princess. In the past, she would never be jealous of anyone, because she was so outstanding. At such a young age, she was already a famous divine-grade alchemist in the 3 provinces. Who did she need to be jealous of? But now, she was inexplicably jealous of the little crown princess. Because she was actually treated so wholeheartedly by the divine province's crown prince, such an unparalleled figure. For the sake of the little crown princess, the divine province's crown prince was simply unwilling to be alone with her in a room. Shan Yisu clenched her fists and said to herself resentfully, "The better you are, the more I want to make you mine." Shan Yisu's eyes flashed with a determined light. She waved her hand, and 4 small snakes came out from her sleeves. They slithered into the 4 tunnels in a crooked manner. A light green jade flute appeared in Shan Yisu's hand. Along with the sound of the flute, the 4 small snakes slithered around in the tunnel as if they were sensing something. After half an hour, Shan Yisu revealed a smile on her face. Her figure abruptly darted into the 3rd tunnel. "Man, let's see how you can escape from my palm." At the same time, Mo Lien dodged and suddenly dodged a row of stone pillars that fell from the top of the stone wall. These stone pillars were all artificially sharpened. If they were really pierced into one's body, wouldn't there be a row of bloody holes? Mo Lien patted her chest and looked back. She tilted her head and thought for a few seconds. Then, she returned to the row of stone pillars and moved her hands and feet a little to rearrange the stone pillars. After doing this, she shouted at the dull-witted number 2, "Hurry up and lead the way." This dull-witted thing was not as smart as Debeo at all. This mechanical puppet too was made from Nanny Fan's flesh and blood, which was refined into a puppet. She didn't expect that the golem was still so stupid. What a useless thing. She could only leave it to explore the way. Prince Mo followed the long tunnel and finally came to the end. Looking at the tall stone door, he blinked slightly. Looking at the carving on the door, he knew that he had arrived at Tianyun's lair. Chapter 3578. A strong human-headed lion beast, a mighty steel rhinoceros skin man, and a human-headed eagle beast with a slender neck. Previously, in the underground base of Xingfu village near Yunshe Peak, he had seen the same carving. Xingfu village, Huiping village, the same carving, the same organization. Tianyun had scattered many strongholds on the divine land. At this moment, he was probably planning to activate those strongholds one by one. Mo Lien raised his hand and punched a diamond-shaped stone platform on the left. With a rumbling sound, the 2 thick stone doors that were closely connected to the stone walls slowly opened inwards. When Mo Lien was about to walk inside, he heard a loud sound behind him. He turned his head and narrowed his cold phoenix eyes. A trace of mockery flashed across his lips. Time turned back to a few minutes ago. Shan Yisu chased Prince Mo all the way to the place where Prince Mo had escaped the attack of a row of stone pillars. When Shan Yisu saw the stone pillars on the ground, she knew that the crown prince must have triggered the mechanism when he passed by. Since the mechanism had been triggered, she didn't need to worry about being attacked. So, she didn't pay attention to her feet. When she hurried forward, she stepped on a hard stone. At that time, she heard the rumbling sound of a spring above her head. Shan Yisu knew that something bad was going to happen. Just as he was about to leave, another row of rocks came tumbling down from above his head. Suddenly, the beautiful alchemist Dan was smashed into a pile of rocks, instantly burying her. With her cultivation, she didn't suffer any external injuries, but the shock was certainly not small. When she got out of the pile of stones with a dusty face, it was already half an hour later. At this time, Shan Yisu's face was bruised and swollen. She couldn't see anyone. She quickly looked at herself in the mirror and screamed. She dressed up, applied medicine, and changed her clothes. After a long time, she chased in the direction of the Crown Prince. But at this time, the Crown Prince had already entered the main room of the Tianyun lair. In the main room, she could still see the bottles and jars used for the previous experiments, and the big jar tiles were all placed there. But now, it was naturally empty. Prince Emo walked around the main hall of the stone room, but didn't find anything out of the ordinary, so he walked towards the side room. This side room had long been cleaned up, and there was nothing left in the room. Emo Lien circled around the stone rooms, and when he carelessly touched the stone wall, he heard the sound of a spring. A small stone door opened on the stone wall beside him. Just as the Crown Prince entered the stone door, Sanyi Su's exasperated cry came from behind him. "Your Highness, I am Susu. I'm Susu." Emo Lien turned a deaf ear to her. He couldn't be bothered to care who that woman was. At this moment, when he heard the single-robed Su introduce himself, he couldn't help but curl his lips. Turning around, he entered the small stone door. He raised his hand and tapped on the mechanism beside him. The stone door slowly slid down. "Your Highness." Sanyi Su was anxious, angry, and unable to calm down. She didn't expect that the Crown Prince didn't even bother to say a word to her. After entering the stone door, he even sealed her escape route and directly closed the door. He just didn't want to go with her. What kind of person was this? At least the two of them could discuss and go out together. Wasn't that better? This Crown Prince of the Divine Land was simply sick. Chapter 3579. Sanyi Su chased after him, flustered and exasperated. Without thinking, she threw out a handful of medicinal powder, which floated straight into the stone door. Prince Emo couldn't help but fly into a rage. She had already attacked him. Although he didn't know what medicinal powder this woman threw out, it clearly wasn't anything good. Thus, Emo Lien raised his hand, and a bundle of surging black flames rushed out of the stone door. When the stone door fell heavily to the ground, he only heard Sanyi Su scream. Following which, that voice was completely covered by the stone door that fell down. This damn woman really got off easy. Emo Lien couldn't quell his resentment. He retreated several steps before looking down to check his body. Fortunately, he had always been cautious. When he saw this woman chasing after him, he immediately activated his defensive spiritual weapon. With the defensive barrier blocking him outside, no matter what kind of poisonous powder that woman threw at him, it was useless against him. Emo Lien turned around and walked up the passageway. However, he abruptly turned back, and his phoenix eyes hardened as he threw out two balls of black flames. With two sudden bangs, two small snakes were blasted into pieces by his black flames above the stone wall, and their mangled flesh flowed down. Emo Lien's gaze landed on the black blood flowing down the stone wall, and the murderous intent in his eyes rippled faintly. "You really are alive. Sick. Mu residents in Dragon Flame City Arbor's earlier commotion at the Mu residence's mountain gate had clearly alarmed everyone in the Mu residence. Old Master Mu also rushed over after hearing the news. After seeing his little granddaughter's expressionless stoic face, he keenly sensed that this little stoic's attitude seemed to be a bit different from before. Family head Mu wrote me a letter and told me to come collect Chaoyang Pavilion's reward. Arbor nodded indifferently at Old Master Mu. "Sorry to disturb you." Old Master Mu's heart involuntarily skipped a beat when he saw her cold and desolate expression. He seemed to be able to sense that his little granddaughter was even more distant and apathetic than before. He still remembered that his little granddaughter didn't have this iceberg appearance on the day of the birthday banquet. At that time, whether it was the way she looked at people or the way she spoke, it was not as sharp and cold as it was now. It was as if everything had returned to the starting point overnight. This little fellow seemed to have returned to the past. When he looked at the Moo family, there was no warmth in his eyes. The old man couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. But he quickly adjusted his mentality and nodded at Arbor. "I'll take you there." Arbor responded faintly. He moved and followed the old man for a few steps before stopping in front of Washer, who was watching the commotion. The little crown princess took out a debt note from her inner world and tossed it to the fifth branch's wife. Without saying anything, she left with the old man. "Fifth sister-in-law, what did the crown prince consort give you?" Moo Dongni leaned over to take a look curiously. Then, she cried out in surprise, "Pink House is dead." Hua Shi also pursed her lips and abruptly raised her head to look at the little crown princess's departing figure. But at this time, the little crown princess had already left with the old man, leaving behind only the corners of her moon-white clothes, which glided past the flower bushes at the corner. Moo Dongni looked at Hua Shi with a complicated expression and muttered to herself, "Hey, what kind of person is this crown princess?" She clearly didn't speak more than 2 sentences to fifth sister-in-law Hua Shi, but she actually came forward to resolve such a troublesome matter as the pink house for Hua Shi. But say, she really cared about kinship. Chapter 3580. Why was she so indifferent to Mu Jingfeng and Grandpa Mu? She was really a little girl with complicated thoughts. Mu Dongni shook her head, feeling a little upset. Right now, everyone in the family was saying that the crown prince consort was a woman who was unreasonable and had little affinity with family. However, she could see some clues from Miss Hua's matter today. Perhaps it was just that her family didn't know this young crown prince consort well. Mu Dongni and Miss Hua looked at each other and said nothing in the end. On the other side, Arbor, led by Grandpa Mu, passed through the garden and came to a very secluded place. At a glance, there was nothing in front of her. There was neither a small building or any flowers or trees. It was just a flat ground with a wide view. Xiao Mu only felt a slight heat on her wrist, and when she looked down, she saw that the verdant pine and cypress jade bracelet that she had been wearing all this time seemed to be emitting a faint light that disappeared in a flash. When she looked down again, the jade bracelet didn't respond. She subconsciously raised her hand to touch the bracelet, thinking that her eyes were playing tricks on her. "Elder Qing." Grandpa Mu called out, but the other party didn't respond at all. Arbor turned to look at Grandpa Mu, only to see a rare trace of awkwardness in his expression. "What's the problem?" Arbor asked indifferently. Every time the Chaoyang Pavilion is opened, several elders have to work together to open a small gap in the defensive barrier. Of course, every family disciple has to get the approval of Ancestor Chaoyang to pass through this gap. Otherwise, even if they go in, they will still be kicked out. Arbor made an "oh" sound and looked at Grandpa Mu, waiting for him to continue. "Jojo, wait here for a while. Grandpa will go find Elder Qing and the others." Grandpa Mu cursed Elder Qing and the others in his heart. How could he not know by now? Elder Qing and the other elders must be unwilling to help Jojo open the Chaoyang Inn, so they must have found an excuse to hide somewhere. While they were talking, a head popped out from the door of the courtyard. The head shrank back when it saw old Master Mu. "Xiao Tang, I can already see you. Come out." After old Master Mu shouted, the young man named Xiao Tang came out from the corner. He lowered his head and did not dare to look into old Master Mu's eyes. "Where are your grandfather and the others?" Grandpa Mu asked with a sullen face. "Grandpa and the others, yesterday, they worked together to help Ro Yen, Miss Ro Yun, and the others open the door to Chaoyang restaurant. So they're a little tired today. I went back to rest just now." Grandpa Mu's face darkened. He was also someone who had once been the patriarch, so how could he not know the weight of these elders and disciples in the clan? If opening the door to Chow Yang restaurant was enough to tire these elders out and make them go back to rest, then the Mu clan would have been uprooted long ago. Among these elders, at least 2 were in the godly realm, while the rest were at the peak of the 15th level of the spirit realm. How could they be tired from opening a door with such cultivation? Wasn't that a joke? To put it bluntly, they were not willing to help Chow Chow spend another effort to open the barrier of the Morning Sun restaurant. Chapter 3581. Old Master Mu turned around to look at his granddaughter's cold and indifferent expression. He felt slightly uncomfortable, so he said, "Jojo, don't worry. Grandpa will go find someone now and help you, no need." Arbor coldly refused. Her gaze circled the empty space in front of her before finally landing on the stone tablet at the side of the courtyard. This stone tablet was very inconspicuous. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't notice it erected here. She curiously walked over and stood in front of the stone tablet to take a look. 99 horizontal lines were clearly engraved on the stone tablet. At this moment, the 3 horizontal lines at the bottom were glowing red, and there were actually small words flashing next to them. Arbor took a closer look and saw that the small words next to the horizontal lines were actually the names of a few people. They were Mu Ro Yen, Mu Ro Yun, and Mu Jiating. Arbor had heard of this Mu Jiating before. It was said that he was a genius talisman master from a branch family. He was only 23 years old and was already a perfected yellow-level talisman master. This Mu Jiating, who was only a step away from becoming a black-level great talisman master, was able to obtain a spot to enter Chaoyang Pavilion. But Mu Ro Yen and Mu Ro Yun, with their advanced-level talisman master standards, they could enter Chaoyang Pavilion. How could there not be anything fishy about this? When old Master Mu saw his granddaughter's gaze carefully landing on the names, his old face couldn't help but redden slightly. He couldn't help but lightly cough and say, "These 2 children have made great progress recently. Especially Ro Yun. She, is about to enter the yellow-level talisman master realm." Arbor meaningfully glanced at the old man and mockingly said, "This Mu Ro Yen, it seems that she hasn't even reached the advanced-level talisman master standard, right? If such a person could obtain the qualifications to enter Chaoyang Pavilion, then there wasn't much interest in whether she could enter Chaoyang Pavilion or not." Old Master Mu instantly felt a slight burning pain on his face. Mu Ro Yan's talisman drawing standards weren't that great, but the candidates to enter Chaoyang Pavilion were ultimately decided by his son, Mu Jingfeng. The old man hadn't been in charge of anything for many years, so he didn't think too much about it. Now that his granddaughter had pointed it out, his old face burned. He heard that when Mu Ro Yen entered Chaoyang in yesterday, she was holding a rare purple talisman message talisman, which actually made old ancestor Chaoyang look at her in a new light. It was rare that he did not kick her out. Although the old man was also a little surprised, the matter had already been settled, and there was nothing he could do. Could it be that he could rush in and beat Mu Ro Yen out and accuse her of cheating? Arbor turned around and was about to leave. "In that case, it doesn't matter if we enter or not." "Hey, wait, Jojo." Grandpa Mu hurriedly stopped her and said, "I'm going to find him now. You wait here for a while. You definitely have the qualifications to enter Chaoyang restaurant. No one in the family can stop you from going in. You've already given these 3 places to others. It seems like the previous competition was merely a formality." Chiao Mu gazed at this old geezer mockingly. "Back then, you were the one who said that only 3 people could enter Chaoyang Pavilion every year, right?" "Yes, that's true, but Jojo, this was the rightful winner of the family competition. If she couldn't enter Chaoyang Pavilion, who else in the family could?" Chapter 3582. Old Master Mu glared at Xiao Tang with an ugly expression and said, "Jojo, don't go. Stay here and wait for Grandpa. 15 minutes, no, 15 minutes, 15 minutes will be enough. Wait for me." Old Master Mu flew up and disappeared from Arbor's sight in a few leaps. Xiao Mu knew in her heart that this old man had gone to find those elders, but there was still no ripple of interest in her eyes. She stared at the third horizontal line on the stele and walked to the back of the stele to take a look. She realized that there were many names floating behind the stele. For example, Mu Xingqian's name indicated that he had broken through to the 58th floor. Mu Yuanyuan was on the 29th floor. It seemed that each horizontal line represented a floor, and this Chaoyang pavilion probably had 99 floors. Now that the horizontal line on the third floor was lit up, did that mean that one of the three people had reached the third floor? But she heard that they had already entered the Chaoyang pavilion yesterday. They only reached the third floor after a day and a night. Didn't that mean that Mu Xingqian had to stay on the 58th floor for 2 to 3 months? Arbor couldn't help but chuckle. She turned around, and anger flashed through her cold eyes. "Why are you still standing here?" Scram! That youth called Xiao Tang was currently cowering on the side while keeping an eye on Xiao Mu. When he heard the young crown prince consort shout, he also got a fright, and he retreated a few steps. Arbor was about to leave when she suddenly felt the cypress jade bracelet on her wrist heat up. "Ha! What's up with the bracelet today?" She looked down and saw that the bracelet on her wrist suddenly emitted a soft light. This light? Why does it look like it? Arbor's heart skipped a beat. Before she had time to think, she felt the scenery in front of her flash past her. The space changed. When she opened her eyes again, she was already in a vast grassland. Arbor stared blankly at the dark green grassland in front of her. She blinked and closed her eyes, chanting 3 times in her heart, "Illusion array, break." When he opened his eyes again, he was still in that vast grassland. Behind her came the sound of a herd of animals running. Sir Jojo turned around to take a look and quickly flew into the air. She looked at the large herd of antelopes spreading like a flood under her feet with a dumbfounded expression. Damn, this green grass and blue sky is too realistic. By the time the large herd of antelopes ran over, 15 minutes had already passed. Xiao Mu floated down to the ground in exasperation. She looked around her in a daze as she surveyed the boundless grassland around her. What was she doing? Did he enter Chaoyang restaurant? Arbor looked down at the bracelet in his hand. This bracelet was the key to opening the Holy Water Sect's Maple Pavilion's secret location. What did it have to do with Morning Sun Pavilion? The only connection was back then, the talisman matrix outside the Holy Water Sect's Maple Pavilion was also set up by Patriarch Chao Yang. Could it be the key? Could it be used? Enter all the talisman arrays set up by old ancestor Zhao Yang. So to speak, the seemingly empty yard outside was actually set up with multiple layers of concealment and defense rune arrays. It was just that she couldn't see through them with her current talisman energy level. Sir Jojo blinked. Was there such a coincidence? Outside, old Master Mu hurried over with Elder Qing and the others. He immediately saw Little Soup standing in the empty yard like a block of wood. Why are you the only one here? Where's Jojo? Rascal, don't tell me you said something you shouldn't have again and made Jojo leave in anger. Chapter 3583. Old Master Mu scolded him. Xiao Tang, on the other hand, pointed to the front in astonishment. He opened his mouth and looked at Old Master Mu in a daze. What's with that expression? Why are you pointing there? Old Master Mu roared at him. Speak. Old Master. Mu Zitang hurriedly said, yes, she went in by herself. What? Old Master Mu and Elder Qing couldn't help but cry out and look at Mu Zitong with strange eyes. Elder Qing hurriedly asked, Xiao Tang, what's going on? Tell us clearly. Grandpa, just now, I was standing here with the Crown Princess. Crown Princess, look at me standing here, and you're telling me to scram. What? What right does she have to tell you to get out? Elder Qing's face immediately darkened. Xiao Tang was his grandson. Even if the Crown Princess had a noble status, she didn't have much status in the Mu family. How dare a foreign girl tell his grandson to get out? How dare she? Old Master Mu roared, what are you talking about? Get to the point. Elder Qing shut his mouth with a dissatisfied look. Mu Zitong hurriedly said, I had just taken a few steps back when I saw a barrier appear behind the Crown Princess. Then a door opened in the middle and sucked the Crown Princess in just like that. At that time, the Crown Princess's body was full of splendor, so no one could see what was going on clearly. In any case, the Crown Princess must have entered Chaoyang Pavilion. Mu Zitong said with certainty. Impossible. Elder Qing waved his hand and denied it with a look of disbelief. Chaoyang Pavilion has never opened its door by itself. That's right. Every time, we work together to open a gap for the children to get in. It can only be opened once or twice a year. How could it be possible this time? Old Master Mu waved his hand to interrupt the elders. Since Xiao Tang saw it with his own eyes, it must be true. Even though Jojo has entered Chaoyang Pavilion, I still have to explain everything that happened before. Mu Tsang glared angrily at the family elders. You all are elders of the Mu family. You've been in the Mu family for several tens of years. You should know the rules of the Mu family very well. No matter what, Jojo is still a daughter of the Mu family. Since she won the competition, you shouldn't have made things difficult for her and even did such a thing. I don't need to ask to know who instigated all of this. Jing Feng is muddle-headed, but as elders, are you as muddle-headed as him? After Mu Tsang finished speaking, he turned around and left. You guys stay here and watch over this place. If there are any strange movements in Chaoyang restaurant, come and report to me. As he spoke, he walked out of the empty courtyard and ordered in a deep voice, go and call the patriarch over. This Mu Jingfeng's way of doing things was truly disappointing him more and more. Back then, wasn't the decision to hand over the entire Mu clan to him a little too hasty? Elder Qing and the others looked at each other in dismay before all of them walked toward the stone tablet. Xiao Tang, is what you said earlier true? Grandson's words are true. Mu Zitong quickly nodded. Elder Qing couldn't help but look puzzled. How is that possible? When did this Patriarch Chaoyang's temper become so good? Elder Qing, look, what's going on here? One of the elders suddenly raised his hand and pointed at the stone tablet, his eyes widening. Chapter 3584. Arbor jumped back and forth on the grassland for a while before she finally stopped. She reached out to tap her chin and muttered to herself, it seems that this should be a large-scale talisman array. These antelopes seemed to have gone crazy as they ran back and forth repeatedly, as if they were possessed. Was it probably a repetition talisman? To be able to create such a huge illusion of an antelope herd so generously. There was also a repetition talisman effect inside. Or put it this way. Actually, the entire Chaoyang restaurant was enveloped by a talisman array from the inside out. Once someone stepped into the building, it meant that the test had already begun. It was extremely easy to crack the repetition talisman. A dozen of the unlocking talismans would do. Arbor took out a handful of talisman papers from her pocket. These were what she drew when she first entered the industry. They were all high-level talismans, but they were all useless now. I'll reward you. She casually threw them out, and a handful of talisman papers flew out with a whoosh. They formed an oval in the air and covered her from top to bottom. The moment the unlocking talisman was thrown out, she disappeared from the grassland. When she opened her eyes again, she was already standing on a small deserted island. From afar, she saw a little old man with his back facing her. He was sitting calmly on the shore, fishing. Lord Jojo ran over and happened to see the old man catch a big, lively fish from the sea. Without a word, the little fellow pounced over and hugged the fish. She casually grabbed a rock from the ground and smashed the fish's head with 2 bangs. The old man stood up from the rock and pointed at Arbor. He was so angry that his old face was distorted. You. Arbor slowly took out a jade talisman from the fish's stomach and waved at the old man. See you at the next stage. As her fingertips moved, the jade talisman instantly shattered. The little person also disappeared from the shore of the deserted island with a whoosh. The old man stared blankly at the scene in front of him. After a while, he closed his mouth and muttered to himself, This. Where did this monster come from? What kind of sharp eyes did he have? He could actually see that the core array talisman was in the fish's stomach. The old man also disappeared with a whoosh. At this time, Arbor had already passed through 7 levels and arrived in front of a small garden with richly ornamented beams and painted rafters. As soon as she opened the door, she saw red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and purple. The 7-colored man was sitting in the courtyard. When they heard the sound of the door being pushed open, they all turned around and gave her a flirtatious look while waving the handkerchiefs in their hands. Arbor felt a chill run down his spine. She hurriedly apologized, wrong way, and slammed the door shut. Then, he stared blankly at the closed door and thought for a moment. That's not right. I'm not mistaken. This is the place. This old ghost actually dared to set up a beauty illusion array for her. Let's see how she's going to deal with this old fellow. Bang! She kicked the door open and was almost hugged by the beautiful man in red. Arbor immediately swung her hand to slap him. But just as her hand was about to land, she heard the beautiful man's pitiful cry. Don't hit me, Jojo. Arbor focused and looked. Hey, it was actually Jojo's Lotus's aggrieved little face. It's over. She turned around again and instantly felt dizzy. The red, orange, yellow, green, indigo, and purple beauties in the courtyard had all turned into Jojo's Lotus. This illusion array was really powerful. It could actually make Jojo's Lotus appear. Chapter 3585. Jojo's Lotus wouldn't look at Jojo with this aggrieved expression. I'll beat you to death, you shameless Jojo impersonating Lotus. Sir Jojo took out a ferrule from his inner world and smashed a red-clothed man's head into pieces. Then, the little fellow smacked 3 people in succession. When she smacked the 4th person, that guy actually rolled on the ground and screamed, Jojo's killing someone, Jojo's killing someone. Jojo, don't beat me to death, I'm your Duanyu. Jojo, don't kill me. My heart hurts when you hit me, my heart hurts, wah, I don't want to live anymore, I can't live anymore. Sir Jojo was speechless as he looked at that guy rolling on the ground. He was so shocked that he broke out in a sweat. I'll beat you to death, you phantom dog. He actually dared to impersonate Duanyu, and such a weakling at that. Yes, Duanyu was a weakling. But how could he be so weak? Bang, bang. The guy rolling on the ground was crippled and disappeared. Arbor kicked the back of the last green-clothed beauty who was scrambling forward. Jojo, you even want to kill your husband. Ah, Jojo's killing someone. Jojo. I'll beat you to death. Arbor smacked that green-clothed beauty to death on the ground with a thud. Then, she opened her hands, and countless yellow talismans appeared. She roared, "Break!" Boom! The entire courtyard in front of her turned into nothingness under her furious roar. The old geezer who was watching the show from afar jumped in fright and quickly fled far away. As he ran, he kept patting his chest. "Fuck, what kind of evildoer is this? She's simply a malefic star." Meanwhile, outside Morning Sun Pavilion, Elder Cheen couldn't believe his eyes at all. He stared blankly at the red line that kept jumping up and down on the stone tablet. His intuition told him that there might be something wrong with his eyes. If there wasn't something wrong with his eyes, why would he see this floor keep jumping up? A quarter of an hour ago, Arbor's name was still on the first floor, but now, in just a quarter of an hour, it had reached the 7th floor. The 8th level, the 9th level. Impossible. Elder Cheen hurriedly nudged Mu Zitang, who was also dumbfounded, and said, "Quickly go and report to the old master that there seems to be a problem with this stone tablet." At this moment, Mu Tsang was sitting in the main room with a sullen face as he coldly stared at Mu Jingfeng, who was standing before him with his head lowered. "Jingfeng, I don't have to say what you did, do I? Jojo is the champion of this family competition, but you gave her place to Mu Ruyan and Mu Royun. You were the one who instructed those elders to take her down a notch and not open the door for her in front of Morning Sun Pavilion, right? Do you think you can teach her a lesson by doing this? Do you want her to know how much authority you have in this Mu family? Do you want to tell her that there are some things that you can give her if you want to, and that you may not give her what you don't want even if she has the qualifications?" Muddle-headed, muddle-headed. Old Master Mu glared at his son next to him as he shook his head repeatedly. "Don't tell me you still don't understand her temperament. Don't talk about Morning Sun Pavilion, she may not even care about it. Even if she really wants it, with her status, if His Highness the Crown Prince asks you to offer it, can you not give it to him?" He used to think that his son was smart, but now, it seemed that. Chapter 3586. How stupid. Mu Tsang shook his head as he looked at his son in disappointment. She was clearly his biological daughter, yet she ended up in a situation where they were like fire and water. What was truly a good hand of cards was completely ruined. Mu Jingfeng's heart involuntarily thumped as he looked at his father's appearance. The disappointment in old Master Mu's eyes was so strong that he could not pretend not to see it. Mu Jingfeng could not help but feel a little flustered. If old Master Mu became picky about him, wouldn't it even his position as the head of the family would become unstable as a result? He knew that there were quite a few brothers in the family who were troublesome. His second brother had been eyeing the position of the family head and had been scheming for several decades. If his second brother were to find out that the old man was dissatisfied with him, it would not be a good thing. "Father." Mu Jingfeng was about to defend himself when he was interrupted. Mu Tsang raised his hand to stop him. "Go back and think about it carefully. See if I'm right. Although I haven't interacted much with Jojo, I know that she's a pure and kind-hearted girl. If you give her your sincerity, she will definitely change her opinion of you in the future. If you insist on doing things your own way," Mu Tsang sighed and glanced at his son with disappointment. "Regarding Rochuan's matter, you were wrong. You had to wait for Jojo to return before you punished Rochuan for her to see. She already has a grudge against you, and now, she will only think that you're a cold and heartless father without the slightest bit of affection for your children. She must think that our Mu family, from top to bottom, is a group of cold-blooded people." Mu Tsang could not defend himself on the matter of punishing Mu Rochuan. In fact, even he had some thoughts of currying favor with this little granddaughter. Unfortunately, he had overreached himself. Mu Jingfeng's face was tense as he said angrily, "What? You're wrong about punishing Mu Rochuan. What does she mean by this? Could it be that she wants us to let Mu Rochuan go? If we really let Mu Rochuan go, with her personality, she'll be the first to refuse to let it go. Mu Tsang instantly looked at Mu Jingfeng tiredly. You still don't understand what I mean. Your daughter dislikes the infighting and scheming within the family the most. If you were willing to treat her with a little bit of sincerity, you wouldn't be in such an awkward situation now. Mu Jingfeng was instantly enraged when he heard that. Father, the entire family didn't have any objections to how Mu Rochuan was dealt with back then. Why is it all our son's fault now? Mu Tsang glanced at Mu Jingfeng, unable to continue arguing with him. Just as he was about to ask him to leave, he suddenly saw a person rushing in from outside the courtyard. He knelt down and shouted anxiously, Patriarch, Old Master, there's a problem with the stone tablet outside Chaoyang restaurant. At this moment, almost everyone in the Mu family was alarmed. Everyone knew that something had gone wrong with the stone tablet outside the Chaoyang tower. The little crown princess was in the Chaoyang restaurant. In less than 2 hours, the stone tablet indicated that she had appeared on the 49th floor. Hee hee. Are you sure this isn't a joke? Even the top genius of their clan, Mu Xingqian, took more than a month to reach the 58th floor of the Chaoyang pavilion. In recent years, no one had been able to break the record of the 58th level. Mu Xingqian also came after hearing the news. Chapter 3587. What happened? Mu Xingqian hurriedly separated the crowd. Make way, make way. Is my younger sister inside? Elder Qing turned to look at him and nodded. Xiao Tang said that Arbor went in by herself. Her name also appeared on this stone tablet, so it seems to be true. Even now, he still felt that this matter was shrouded in clouds and fog, making him unable to make head or tail of it. It's the 50th floor, the 50th floor. At this moment, there was an uproar in the crowd as everyone stared at the stone tablet in shock. It was as if the stone tablet was not just a tablet but a monster. They wished they could pull out its tendons and peel off its skin to see what was inside. Mu Xingqian hurriedly went forward to take a look. Sure enough, he saw his younger sister's name clearly written on the stone tablet, and the red horizontal lines on the stone tablet had indeed lit up to the 50th floor. Everyone could not help but look at each other in dismay, clearly dumbfounded. If it was as Mu Zitong said, that the little crown princess had only gone in for less than 2 hours, then this was simply a miracle. She took less than 2 hours to reach the 50th floor. Their eyes must be playing tricks on them, right? Bro, come, pinch me. See if it hurts. A Mu family disciple could not help but mutter to the person beside him. Subsequently, he was pinched hard, and he screamed like a pig being slaughtered. He then jumped up and shouted, I'm not dreaming. There really is someone who reached the 50th floor of Chaoyang restaurant in 2 hours. The family head is here, the family head is here. Someone shouted from outside. The two sides immediately gave way, opening up a small path in the middle that could allow one person to pass through. Mu Tsang walked over with a solemn expression, followed by Mu Jingfeng, who swiftly came over. What's going on? When Mu Jingfeng saw so many disciples gathered here, his gaze involuntarily sharpened as he displayed the dignity of the Mu family's head. It's the crown princess. And the crown princess entered Chaoyang restaurant. The crown prince consort reached the 50th floor of Morning Sun Pavilion in less than 2 hours. The crown princess is really amazing. I used to say that the eldest young miss was so powerful. Today, I see that the crown princess is the most powerful girl in the family. Yes. The crown princess is simply the Mu family's rarely seen genius in 100 years. Mu Jingfeng glanced at his disciples in astonishment. Only to see these Mu family's disciples, each and every one of them is glowing, everyone is praising the little crown princess. This left Mu Jingfeng somewhat puzzled. After all, the little crown princess did not get along well with the disciples of the Mu family. Why were all the disciples of the Mu family now whispering that she was powerful, saying that she was the genius of the Mu family, with a hint of worship in their eyes? Boom! As he spoke, a water-green figure was kicked out of the mirage-like barrier. She rolled on the ground awkwardly, and her hairpins fell to the ground with tinkling sounds. "Second miss," someone exclaimed. "It's Miss Ro Yen." Everyone instantly looked strangely at Mu Ro Yen, who was suddenly kicked out of Chaoyang restaurant. They saw that her hairpin and skirt were very messy, and her hair was disheveled and hung down. Her small face was filled with terror, and she kept patting her clothes when she came out. Chapter 3588. This Mu Ro Yen was currently curled up on the ground, patting her clothes as she repeatedly shouted, "Don't burn me, don't burn me. Ah, don't burn me." Mu Jingfeng's face immediately crumbled. This Mu Ro Yan's name was now stuck on the second floor's horizontal line. This was the person with the lowest results in all these years. After entering Chaoyang restaurant for a day, she only made it to the second floor before being kicked out by Patriarch Chaoyang. This Mu Ro Yen was the first in the family. In the past, those disciples could not enter at most and were kicked out by the Patriarch in disdain when they reached the entrance. This Mu Ro Yen was different. She truly had the chance to enter, but she did not even have the ability to go up to the fifth floor before being kicked out. Perhaps, from now on, this name of Mu Ro Yen would take root behind the tablet inscriptions. This was no different from being nailed to the pillar of shame. In the future, the descendants of the Mu family would be able to see this name from generation to generation. They could casually ask around and find out that this was the second daughter of the Mu family head who was kicked out by the Patriarch when she reached the second floor of Chaoyang restaurant. At this thought, Mu Jingfeng only felt his face burning with panic, and his entire person was on the verge of exploding. He stepped forward and dragged his disappointing second daughter up from the ground. Then, he gave her a tight slap across her face. "You're such a disappointment. Do you think that you haven't embarrassed yourself enough here?" Scram! "Father! It's Arbor. It's Arbor who harmed me, father." Mu Ro Yen was pulled up by her father and trembled in anger when she heard her father's merciless scolding. "What's the matter?" Mu Jingfeng looked at his daughter with a puzzled expression. Could it be that Ro Yen met that Arbor in Chaoyang restaurant? He looked at this daughter of his suspiciously. Mu Ro Yen hurriedly said, Yes, father. It's Arbor who harmed me." She caused a ruckus in Chaoyang restaurant and chased after the Patriarch's soul, relentlessly beating him up. Your daughter was caught in the crossfire. Everyone instantly stared at Mu Ro Yen as if they were looking at a lunatic. It seemed that the second miss couldn't stand the stimulation of only going up 2 floors in a day and was probably mentally deranged. What nonsense was she saying? The little crown princess chased after Patriarch Chaoyang restaurant's soul relentlessly. Ha, ha, ha. They must be hallucinating. When Mu Ro Yen saw everyone's expression, she immediately realized that they did not believe her words at all. She hurriedly cried out, "I'm telling the truth, don't doubt me. My sister Ro Yun will probably be kicked out later." Less than a minute after he said that, everyone heard a bang sound. Chow Ro Yan's is up, S, wrote S, and looked, T, S. Everyone couldn't help but shake their heads. Looking at the Mu family head's eyes, they couldn't help but have a strange look. The family heads. He appointed people by favoritism. Mu Ro Yen and Mu Ro Yun's talisman crafting was very average. There were plenty of youths in the family side branch who had higher cultivation than them. The reason why the two of them had the chance to enter Chao Yang restaurant was because Chapter 3589. Wasn't it because they were both the daughters of the patriarch, so the patriarch had opened a convenient back door for them? Thinking of this, when those youngsters looked at Mu Ro Yen and her sister, their gazes were slightly unkind. A pair of useless trash, and they even took away their quota for nothing, causing those who could stand out to lose their chance. After all, Mu Ro Yun was still young and had been spoiled since she was young, so how could she bear with other people's gazes? She immediately climbed up shakily and shouted at the top of her lungs, "It's not my fault, it's not. It's Arbor." Arbor set fire to Chao Yang restaurant and even fought with the patriarch. If you don't believe me, then go in and take a look. Just as the outside was in a state of chaos, Xiao Mu was currently sprinting madly through a bamboo forest. She chased after the stooped figure in front of her while continuously throwing out explosion talismans. That old man was running in front, panting and shouting as he ran, "Great-grandson, I'm telling you, great-grandfather, stop immediately. I'm telling you, great-grandson, you're committing treason, deceiving your master and destroying your ancestors." The old man's head was hit by a winter fruit thrown by Sir Jojo. Staggering forward a few steps, the old man cried out pitifully, "Great-grandfather was just joking with you. Did you have to chase me from the 18th floor all the way to the 58th floor? You're the girl with the highest talisman skills in my Mu clan for 1,000 years. It's not unreasonable for you to marry a promiscuous husband. Why do you keep hitting the old man? Let me tell you. In the past, there was a lady called Lady Qingqing in our clan. She married 7 husbands and gave birth to many children. You. This child can't be taught. Didn't I just set up an illusion array for you? You've already destroyed them, so why are you still chasing after this old man? Don't you know, in the 3 continents, whoever has the biggest fist is right. No matter if it's a male or female cultivator, as long as you're powerful enough, you can marry as many as you want. Stop hitting me, great-grandson, I'm telling you, if you hit me again, great-grandfather will really get angry." This old man was full of nonsense all the way, and he didn't even pant when he said these words. With a wave of his hand, Arbor uprooted countless bamboos and threw them at the old man's head. Hey! Her great-grandson wanted to kill her great-grandfather. This rebellious little thing. Don't think that your great-grandfather is a paper tiger. If your great-grandfather really gets angry, your whole family will be in trouble. Pang, 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 pang. More than 10 bamboos were thrown in succession. The old man hurriedly covered himself with a defensive barrier. Along the way, he was smashed by the bamboo and kept flying forward. He kept shouting, "Hey! Great-grandfather won't joke about this with you in the future, okay? Just how many talismans did this little pervert have on him?" From the moment he stepped into Chao Yang restaurant until now, he had been throwing out talismans non-stop. It was as if there was an endless supply of talismans. The old man hurriedly waved his hand, and his figure suddenly shot to the top of the bamboo forest. After a few ups and downs, his shadow disappeared. This old man was really infuriating. The little fellow ran to the side of the bamboo forest. She raised her head and scanned the surroundings. Then, she stopped in her tracks while panting with rage. Her gaze swept around, and then several jade talismans appeared in her hand. She quickly flicked them out. In a short moment, a ripple-shaped whirlpool appeared in the center of the jade talismans. Chapter 3590. A circle of air current appeared in the center of the vortex, and it followed the vortex and spun several times in the opposite direction. A small jade talisman suddenly appeared in the center of the vortex, flickering with a lustrous luster. Arbor punched at that jade talisman. Before his hand could touch it, he heard the old man's shriek. Don't. Hey, little ancestor. Stop punching it. You've already destroyed several dozen of my core formation talismans. If this continues, my Morning Sun restaurant's defenses and concealment formations will all be destroyed by you. That old man's apparition abruptly appeared in front of Qiao Mu with a bitter face and a wrinkled white beard. The old man pitifully said, "Great-grandson, let's have a talk." "Speak." Arbor grumpily glared at the old man. This old geezer was very wicked. Previously, he was hiding in a corner and wanted to trap Jojo inside a trapping formation. Don't be fooled by his honest appearance, he was actually full of wicked ideas. "Great-grandson, look, great-grandfather is getting old. I can't stand you tormenting me along the way. My soul still has to wait for my main body to return from her travels. I can't be finished now." Arbor expressionlessly looked at him. "You're already dead. Your descendants have placed your memorial tablet in the ancestral hall." The old man instantly broke out in curses. "Nonsense. This bunch of bastards are simply fooling around. This old man only went out to travel and hasn't returned for several decades. They actually dare to curse this old man to die. I won't die even if those bastards die." Arbor's mouth twitched for no reason. "If those bastards of yours are bastards, then what are you? An old tortoise? Great-grandson?" The old man beamed at her, his gaze landing on her wrist. "Tell great-grandfather what your relationship is with that old woman from the Holy Water sect." It stopped at the 58th floor. Outside, an elder shouted, causing everyone to heave a sigh of relief. This monstrous genius was probably stumped by this level as well. Fortunately, if this fellow really charged up to the 99th floor in one go, the hearts of all the Mu clan disciples present would probably be unable to bear it. On the other side, Prince Mo walked along the pitch-black tunnel with a luminous pearl in his hand. This Tian Yun small base was built underground, and it seemed to be quite large. Mo Lien walked along the tunnel for more than an hour before she saw a bit of light. He took a deep breath and sprinted up. Soon he was out of the light. Suddenly, the sound of a waterfall could be heard. When he looked up, he saw that he was at the bottom of a valley. The mountain was steep, and there was a silver waterfall rushing down. The sound of the water was loud. Mo Lien's gaze fell on the opposite cliff. Over there was a black Ganoderma lucidum growing under the fine water droplets of the waterfall. What a pure divine tier medicinal herb. He didn't expect that he would find such a good thing when he looked up after randomly entering a valley. His wifey must have secretly guided him here, Prince Mo thought in his heart and was somewhat delighted. He leaped up and flew towards the top of the cliff. Although he didn't understand medicinal theory, he had seen his wifey gather medicinal herbs many times before. He knew that this kind of divine tier medicinal herb had to be stored in a jade box after being plucked. Hence, he took out an empty jade box from his inner world and carefully plucked the black Ganoderma lucidum before placing it inside. "Your Highness." Chapter 3591. Although he couldn't figure out the use of the black Ganoderma lucidum, he could tell it was a divine-level medicinal herb with his many years of experience. He had been inexplicably sucked into the ground by that disc array. After going through so much trouble, he had finally not wasted his efforts. He had even obtained such a pure and natural divine-level medicinal herb for his wife. It could be said that this trip was not in vain. Thinking of this, the Crown Prince was in a good mood. He carefully dug out the black Ganoderma lucidum from the cliff and put it into an empty jade box. Mo Lien raised his hand and patted the cliff lightly. Like a dragon piercing the moon, he landed lightly on the ground. "Your Highness." A surprised cry came from behind. The moment Mo Lien turned around, he threw out a black flame. The black flame moved on the ground like a wriggling black snake. It suddenly spread to the feet of the woman, who was shocked. "Little Seven, kill her," Mo Lien ordered with a cold expression. Shawnee Su, who was panicking and retreating rapidly, was so frightened that her pupils shrank. In the process of retreating, she accidentally stepped on a piece of raised gravel. Shawnee Su only felt that her leg was twisted and she fell to the ground. "Ah!" With tears in her eyes, Shawnee Su looked up at Prince Mo, who was not far away, in panic. "Your Highness, what are you, ah?" Shawnee Su hurriedly rolled on the ground and barely avoided Yen Qi's punch. The punch suddenly turned into a giant dragon claw and scratched at Shawnee Su's face without saying anything. Shawnee Su widened her eyes in horror and her heart was beating wildly. She finally understood that the Crown Prince was not joking with her. The Crown Prince was really going to kill her. But why? What kind of person was the Crown Prince of the Divine Land? Did anyone know that he was so cold and heartless? How could he do such a vicious thing to a flower-like girl? Shawnee Su hurriedly rolled on the ground several times to avoid the dragon claw that suddenly stamped on the ground. She screamed and crawled backward. Suddenly, Shawnee Su tore a talisman in her hand and made a prompt decision. Her figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. Bang! Yen Qi's dragon claw landed on the place where Shawnee Su disappeared. He turned into a human and scratched his little head with a puzzled expression. He turned to look at the Crown Prince behind him. Why did she run away? Mo Lien didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He thought, if she didn't run away, would she wait to be trampled to death by you? He walked to the child, who had a huge appearance but was only an innocent teenager. He raised his hand and patted his head. "Well, it seems that she won't come to us casually in the future. Look around and see if there's a way out." Seventh Yen nodded hard and turned into a small dragon. It then climbed up the cliff. Meanwhile, Crown Prince Mo wandered around the bottom of the valley, mainly because he wanted to see if there were any good medicinal herbs that had been overlooked. If there were any good medicinal herbs, he would dig them up for his wife. His wife would definitely be overjoyed. Needless to say, after he wandered around the valley, he really did find a few stalks of medicinal herbs that were in good condition. Thus, he put them all away and felt that he had gained a lot from this trip. At this moment, a series of crashing sounds came from the top of the cliff. Mo Lien looked up and saw the little dragon flying out with a whoosh. Chapter 3592. It was followed by a green vine that wrapped itself around Seventh Yan's body and pulled him back. Seventh Yan roared in exasperation. His body instantly inflated as if it was filled with air. He struggled to break free from the vine that was wrapped around him and turned back to roar angrily in the direction of the cliff. Instantly, the rocks on the cliff rolled down. Mo Lien stood at the bottom of the valley and leaped up a few times to avoid the rocks that rolled down the cliff. He leaped up the cliff and quickly came to Seventh Yan's side. At this moment, Seventh Yan had already transformed into his human form. He angrily ran to his side and shouted, "Master, Master! There's a cave over there. There's a demon in the cave." Mo Lien did not know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at the little fellow. He raised his hand and patted his head. "I saw a green vine just now." As he spoke, Mo Lien felt his wrist move, and the vine branch of the sapling chocho that he had originally kept in his sleeve abruptly shot out. The upper half of the vine was slightly raised and swayed left and right in mid-air as if it was sensing something. Mo Lien glanced sideways at the vine and his heart skipped a beat. The vine was suspended in mid-air for a few seconds before it suddenly rushed toward the cliff in front. The green silhouette entered a cave on the cliff in no time. This cave was surrounded by many vines and grass. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to discover that there was a cave here. Mo Lien immediately summoned Little Seven back and dashed into the cave alone. He followed Chocho's vine and chased after it as fast as lightning. At this moment, he had already sensed something. Judging from Chocho's appearance, there was probably a fragment of its seed in this cave. Since that was the case, he had to obtain this fragment. This cave was not big and was only about 10 meters deep. It was long and thin, and the gap between the two sides of the cliff was very narrow. After he dashed in, he felt his vision darken. Rustling sounds of fighting could be heard from the depths of the long and thin cave. Mo Lien chased after him and flicked the 3 luminous pearls in his hand, embedding them into the cliff wall. The warm luster immediately illuminated the depths of the cave, causing the shadows to flicker. On the inner wall of the cave, there was a bunch of thick tree vines. The vines were as thick as an elephant's leg. Hundreds and thousands of vines were tangled together in a mess, looking like a hornet's nest. Mo Lien stretched out a finger and tentatively released a bunch of black flames. However, before the black fire could spread, he immediately retracted it and walked toward the inner wall. At this moment, the half-vine cut off from Chocho's main body was swaying left and right in front of the cluster of vines. From time to time, he would whip the vines in front of him. If the sapling Chocho could take human form now, it would definitely have a solemn and lecturing face. How is it? Mo Lien didn't know why she was talking to a vine. The rattan branch shook its head and suddenly raised its front half. It rushed over and whipped the large cluster of rattan branches hanging on the inner wall. From the looks of it, it seemed to be communicating with the other party. However, its methods were as violent as ever. Mo Lien looked speechlessly at the conversation between the vines, feeling that he could not interfere at all. Therefore, he looked around, back and forth in the slender cave, sizing it up. He saw that there seemed to be a lot of shiny things under the knotted vines. Chapter 3593. These things were buried under the cluster of vines, only occasionally shining between the vines. If one did not look carefully, they would really be overlooked. Mo Lien walked over curiously. When the vines that were originally hanging on the inner wall saw him approaching, they hurriedly opened their mouths and countless vines whipped toward Mo Lien. Seeing this, Chocho's vine suddenly rushed forward and whipped the cluster of vines hard. As a result, the other party's beard drooped down a little and completely stopped. Mo Lien did not care about the interaction between the two of them and walked under the cluster of vines with twisted roots. Using the black stick in his hand, he raked through the messy vines and pulled out a large pile of shiny stones. Aren't these holy stones? Mo Lien thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him, so he hastily dug out that pile of sparkling stones. When he saw it, he was amused. These were holy stones that could only be produced in the Holy Realm, and they were the resources needed for the cultivation of the transcendent God realm. There were at least a few thousand holy stones in this pile, which was far more than the holy stones he had now. No way. Could it be that there was a holy vein buried in this deep underground valley that was hard to come by in 10,000 years? In the 3 continents, the holy vein that produced holy stones was basically a legendary item. In the past, it was recorded in the records of strange people. It was said that an old man at the peak of the God realm had already reached the state of death because he had been in this realm for a long time. This meant that if he did not improve within a year, his lifespan would reach the end. Who knew that before this old man was about to die, he had the chance to dig out a few holy stones in the mountain and broke through the peak of the god realm in one fell swoop and finally stepped into the mystic venerable realm that he had always dreamed of. From then on, the old man naturally ascended to the holy realm and became famous in the world. Therefore, it was not that there were no holy stones in the 3 continents. He had sent people to search for the holy stone mine before, but they had only found a few or a dozen pieces. It was absolutely unprecedented for him to be able to find so many holy stones by chance like today. Thus, Mo Lien started searching carefully in the depths of that cave wall. He had a feeling that there was something strange about this place. Otherwise, where would this seed fragment go to get so many holy stones? Perhaps there was something strange underground or in the depths of the cave. Mo Lien reached out to touch the cold stone wall. After touching it for a while, her fingers suddenly paused. Ha! Under the tree vines, it was originally a flat stone wall, but this one was slightly protruding. Just as Mo Lien was carefully searching, the cluster of vines suddenly became violent again. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, trying to wrap around Mo Lien's arm. Chio's vine jumped up and twisted in midair, knocking twice on the cluster of vines as a warning. If Chio's main body was here, it would definitely say something like this: "Don't court death." Courting death didn't end well. This seed fragment grew in this deep valley cliff all year round. Although it was sentient, it was completely incomparable to the fragment found in the Royal Academy and Arbor. If that fragment had the intelligence of a 7 or 8-year-old child, this one was probably only 1 or 2 years old. Chio's vine alone could reprimand this thing until it was docile. If it was the previous few pieces, it would probably not work. Mo Lien dug at the bottom of its tree vines and finally pulled out a small, lustrous green ball from within. Chapter 3594. This ball was woven from emerald green tree vines and looked like it was overflowing with green light. When that bundle of tree vines saw Prince Mo take out this vine ball from its vines, it instantly became somewhat anxious. However, it shook its countless vines and attacked Crown Prince Mo. At this moment, it no longer cared that Chio's vine was writhing in the air to stop it. As if someone had stepped on its tail, this bundle of tree fragments hurled itself at Mo Lien in a flurry of attacks. Chio's vine was unable to stop this little fellow that had suddenly gone berserk. Startled, Mo Lien hurriedly reached out to block that bundle of tree vines that was attacking her with all their might. She shifted a few steps away and lowered her head to look at the little green vine ball in her hand. This vine ball's outer layer was wrapped in rings of vines and she could not see what was inside at all. But it was this little vine ball that made this little tree fragment so anxious that it wanted nothing more than to fight her to the death. Mo Lien speechlessly poked at that little vine ball and raised her head to look at the tree fragment that was whipping towards her feet. "Hey, I'm not trying to snatch your things." He also felt that this was rather strange at this moment. Previously, this fellow did not react at all when he pulled out a large pile of holy stones from under its tree vines. Who would have thought that just by taking a small ball of rattan, he would be able to stimulate the seed fragment? Could it be that there was something strange about this little vine ball? Mo Lien lowered her head and shook the little ball in her hand, releasing a strand of divine sense into that vine ball. However, it seemed to have hit some kind of barrier and was almost bounced back out. This time, Prince Mo felt even more strange. He simply took a few steps forward and stroked that bundle of tree vines as if to comfort it. "All right, don't be nervous. I'm not going to hurt it, I'm just going to see what this is." Chio's branch climbed to the top of the bundle of tree vines and whipped it hard, as if warning it not to act rashly. Although the tree vines were unconvinced and still wanted to whip student Mo Lien, they obediently stopped after being whipped by Chio's branch. However, at this moment, it crawled down from the inner wall. From the center of that bundle of tree vines, a little green person the length of an arm crawled out and crawled to Mo Lien's side like a baby, forcefully rubbing against his robe. Mo Lien had already sat down leaning against the mountain wall. When he saw the little green figure approaching, he picked it up and threw it onto his shoulder. "I'll bring you back later. Your master will definitely be very happy to see you." Mo Lien patted the little green person's head. This little thing already had a nose and eyes, and had transformed into the appearance of a small person. However, his small face was still green, and he looked a little frightening. The little green man shook its limbs, seemingly trying to stop Mo Lien from peeling off the rattan ball with all its might. "What's the hurry? Let's see what it is." Mo Lien patted it exasperatedly, casually clearing away the layers of vines wrapping around the vine ball. Inside, she revealed a bundle of green, sparkling and translucent object. It was like a ball of water that had congealed into a paste, wrapped into a round ball and gently bounced on Mo Lien's palm. When Chocho's branch saw this object, it immediately rushed over. At the last second before it almost collided with the object, Mo Lien reached out and held it tightly in her hand. Chocho's vine jumped restlessly in Mo Lien's hand, as if it was very excited. However, Mo Lien could not be bothered with this little thing at this time. Chapter 3595. All of his attention was focused on the green paste. To be precise, his gaze was fixed on the inside of the paste. He saw a transparent little person with long black hair, walking around in the transparent water bowl. Mo Lien's gaze was fixed on the little person. He was stunned for a long time before he slowly lifted her up and looked at her carefully. His heart was like a huge wave that surged to the heavens, as if it was overturning rivers and seas. This wasn't his Jojo. Chocho's branches, which were originally charging left and right in his hand, also quieted down and slowly crawled out from Mo Lien's palm. They seemed to be very curious as they continuously circled around that glistening green paste. "This can't be the essence of the holy wood, right?" Mo Lien thought to himself. Logically speaking, this little green person was just a fragment of the holy wood that had just gained sentience. How could it encircle half of Jojo's soul and consciously protect it? Could it be that this was the concern of the unseen? But how did this fragment of the small tree find Jojo's soul? The above was not the main point. What shocked Mo Lien the most was that his Jojo actually had a fragment of his soul. He had never heard the little guy mention it before. His gaze fell on Sir Jojo, who was wrapped in the holy wood essence. This little person was expressionlessly walking back and forth in the sphere wrapped in the holy wood essence. She did not stop for even a moment. As she walked back and forth, Mo Lien even felt like bursting out in laughter as he watched her walk back and forth. He stretched out his finger and poked the paste. The essence of the holy wood released a layer of light and instantly bounced his finger back. He never thought that he would be able to casually pick up a wife after he dropped the formation plate and strolled around the cliff in the valley. Mo Lien did not give up and poked the paste again. The holy wood essence bounced him back again. But this time, the little person wrapped in the sphere turned around and walked towards him. After taking a few steps, he turned around expressionlessly and continued to walk. This little nose, little eyes, little hands and feet. She was a miniature version of Jojo. Looking at her was quite interesting. Crown Prince Mo stared at his wifey for a long time, until Chocho's branches randomly rubbed against his arm. Only then did he come back to his senses and put the vine back into his sleeve. He raised his hand and put the messy bundle of vines into a storage talisman. He raised his hand and patted the little green person's head. "Be good and stay in the storage talisman. I'll let you see your real master later." After speaking, he put the little green person away. Looking down at the holy wood essence in his hand, Emolien's lips slightly and a smile appeared in his eyes. No matter what, he had gained quite a lot from this trip. Rather than letting his imagination run wild here, he might as well hurry back and ask his wife about this soul remembrance. He took a deep look at Lady Qiao Qiao's soul remembrance and carefully stored the holy wood essence into his inner world. He then turned to look at the large pile of holy stones on the ground and swept them all into a storage talisman. When luck came, there was really no stopping it. But speaking of which, he forgot to ask the little green person where he got all these holy stones. Emolien thought for a moment and let the little green person out of the storage talisman. Chapter 35-96. He pointed to a piece of holy stone in his hand and poked its little head, meaning that he wanted it to tell him where the holy stone was dug out. In the end, this little green man looked at him with a confused face for a long time, twisting its buttocks and waist, but it still did not know how to open its mouth to speak. This was originally a little thing that had just awakened its spiritual intelligence. Compared to the previous few pieces of tree seed fragments, it was far inferior. It had been hanging in the cave on the cliff all day, and no one taught it to speak, so naturally it did not know how to communicate. Emolien was at his wit's end, thinking that today's harvest was quite rich, and nothing could be forced. He could only give up. Perhaps he could first record this location, and when he got out, he could call someone in to investigate. Emolien came out of the slender cave, and flew to the top of the cliff. Looking into the distance, he could only see a continuous stretch of mountain walls, and at a glance, he could not see the end. Suddenly, from the crevice of the mountain walls, a pitch-black long snake drilled out, opening its mouth and biting towards Emolien's left hand. A vine suddenly shot out from Emolien's sleeve, and with a paw, it hit the snake. That black snake hissed twice, twisted twice, and suddenly burst into flames. Following the black snake's body burst into flames, an indescribable strange smell drifted over with the wind. Emolien's body swayed slightly, and his footsteps were unsteady as he retreated a few steps. That strange smell was very strong, and in a short while, it completely filled up the entire area. He had just raised his sleeve to cover his mouth and nose, when he staggered a few more steps back, and then his whole body seemed to have lost the support of his bones, and softly fell to the ground. Time seemed to have frozen. Emolien fell to the ground in a daze, as if he did not have the slightest bit of strength, only his slender fingers moved slightly a few times. About a quarter of an hour later, a pair of light embroidered shoes came out from the other side of the cliff and walked briskly to his side. At this moment, Prince Mo's eyes were slightly closed, as if there was only a faint light in his eyes. He looked so weak that it seemed like he could not even open his eyelids. Refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. You're finally acting weird now. Shan Isu appeared beside Crown Prince Mo with a contorted expression and slowly crouched down. Her beautiful eyes flashed with the light of determination to win. She had said before that as long as she wanted something, she would be able to get it no matter what method she used. She had taken a fancy to this man. It was such a good opportunity. Even if she had nothing to do, she had to do something for him. She pursed her lips and smiled at the man on the ground. She raised her hand and was about to touch his handsome face with his thin lips tightly pursed. Shan Isu suddenly felt a chill in her heart. She was shocked and looked down. He saw a shiny dagger stabbed into his chest, and a soft and warm red blood was gushing out from the wound. Saint Clothes Su was flustered. He screamed and covered the dagger in his chest. He stood up and took a few steps back. When he raised his eyes again, he saw that Prince Mo had already climbed up from the ground. A pair of dark phoenix eyes were emitting a gloomy cold light, staring straight at him. Saint Clothes Su felt a chill in her bones, and her whole body could not help but tremble. He did not fall for it. Mo Lien lifted his hand to brush off the dust on his clothes, and coldly stared at the woman in front of him. He sneered mockingly, "Little ant, how dare you plot against me?" Chapter 3597. His special ability, medicinal power, had now broken through to heaven rank. What was the level of a heaven-level pharmacist? Invulnerable to poison. No, it should be the level of invulnerable to poison. For example, Ding Ting Ding once gave him the neurotoxin of the devil grass. If it was now and Ding Ting Ding used this poison on him, he could just casually use the medicinal power to make him suffer the consequences of his own actions. It was that simple. People didn't know that their crown prince of Shenzhou had long been a rare heaven-level pharmacist. You probably couldn't find more than 5 yellow-level pharmacists in the upper 3 provinces, not to mention a heaven-level pharmacist. Wang Dongping of Huiping village, who had used so many corpse puppets to gain experience, was now only an advanced pharmacist. He was still far away from the yellow level. The efficacy of an advanced pharmacist could control the corpse poison in the human body to a certain extent. There were very few apothecaries. Otherwise, Crown Prince Mo wouldn't cherish a mere advanced-level apothecary like Wang Dongping. Therefore, Shan Yisu was simply overestimating herself by showing off her venomous snake and wanting to use this kind of poison to deal with the Crown Prince. Shan Yisu's fingers covering her chest couldn't help but twitch and tremble. The gaps between her fingers were filled with blood, dripping down in streams, causing her face to instantly become incomparably pale. Your Highness. Single-clothed Su staggered back step by step, murmuring to beg for mercy. Yes, it's Su who was blinded by pig oil. Su knows she's wrong. I beg you, let me go this time. Mo Lien coldly stared at the woman in front of him. This was the first time that a man looked at her with such a focused gaze. Shan Yisu didn't feel happy at all. Instead, the suppressed fear in her heart grew bigger and bigger. She was so scared that her legs trembled. She turned around, clutching her chest and barely holding her breath to rush down the cliff. In the blink of an eye, a long and slender whip made of black flames darted out from behind her and landed on half of her body with a pop sound. Her skin and flesh were split open, and a long bloody mark appeared on her back. Shan Yisu turned her head in horror and looked at Mo Lien, who was slowly walking towards her. She cried out involuntarily, You can't kill me. You can't kill me. I'm a divine-level pill master. Her short-circuited brain seemed to have suddenly been reconnected as she quickly took out a lot of pills from her inner world and swallowed them one by one. She said to Mo Lien with a lisp, I can save your mother. If you kill me, I won't die, but you don't even care about your mother's life. Mo Lien gazed at her indifferently. Oh. You can save the Empress. Yes. As long as I find the phoenix wood, remote ghost grass, snow region flower, and jade blood vermilion fruit, I can gather the ingredients to refine the soul-returning pill for your mother. I can 10%. Mo Lien interrupted her with an indifferent expression and said coldly, with your current pill-refining realm, the success rate of refining the soul-returning pill is only 10%. A 10% success rate was equivalent to giving her a pile of good herbs to waste. It was as difficult as ascending to heaven to refine it successfully. No. Shan Yisu's pupils contracted. I'm useful. I'm still useful, Your Highness. Chapter 3598. You're useless. Mo Lien coldly interrupted her. He raised his hand and countless black flames jumped on his fingertips. Alchemist Shan. He said coldly, you shouldn't have provoked me again and again. She knew now. She knew that this man really hated her to the extreme. Even if she walked by his side, it seemed that she was not allowed to. Yes, she was too conceited. She thought that she was a dignified divine-grade alchemist. Even if the crown prince didn't give face to the monk, he would give face to the Buddha. He would definitely favor her. She didn't expect that the crown prince was such a crown prince. She was killed by her own conceit. Shan Yi-su covered the wound on her chest. Her eyes were dark and hard to understand. Undercurrents were surging. If you kill me, my master won't let you off. My life card is in the City of Shadows. My master is the City of Shadows. Third City Lord. If you kill me, my master will definitely not let you off. Mo Lien gazed at her coldly, and with a flip of his hand, a giant palm formed from black fire pressed down on her face. I really have a way to save your mother. Shan Yi-su shouted with a trace of fierceness. The huge palm formed by the black flames had already covered her face. Shan Yi-su's heart was in a mess. She was anxious, angry, and angry. She was now in the prime of her life. Her future was limitless. How could she be willing to die like this? She struggled to throw out an object and roared with a distorted expression, "Since you want me to die, then accompany me to die." This damned man didn't give her any face. He would pay the price for his arrogance. On the road to the Yellow Springs, he would become her stepping stone. The huge palm of black flames suddenly slapped the place where Shan Yi-su was lying. At the same time, the red stone that Shan Yi-su threw out completely exploded. A huge heat wave rolled out from the inside of the stone and engulfed the two people. A loud bang exploded in Mo Lien's ears. That huge force sent him flying several feet away. This was followed by a series of rocks rolling down the cliff. The entire cliff was shaken by a strong force and trembled violently. Prince Mo subconsciously levitated into the air. When he looked down, he saw that the woman's figure had already been crushed by countless rocks. A suction force came from under his feet. Mo Lien's expression turned cold as she was pulled down a few feet. However, he quickly stabilized his body and looked down coldly at Shan Yi-su, who was completely buried by a large pile of rubble. He frowned slightly. The firearm that Shan Yi-su threw out at the last moment was very powerful. If he was not wrong, it should be the fire glaze from the City of Shadows. It was said that the fire glaze in the City of Shadows was divided into 9 grades according to its power. He had once used 3 grade 9 fire-colored glass to destroy a small town, killing more than 1,000 cultivators. He didn't know what grade the fire glaze in Shan Yi-su's hand was. She used this fire glaze to tell Mo Lien that she was indeed from the City of Shadows and didn't lie to him. Who knew that Mo Lien didn't care who she was and dealt with her as he should? The cliff that they were standing on was now being destroyed by the fire glaze. Pieces of the cliff were sliding down the cliff. That strange suction force came from under Mo Lien's feet again. Chapter 3599. It appeared that the formation disk that sucked him into the depths of the ground was still in effect. After Mo Lien's body was pulled down several dozen feet, she stopped and hovered in midair. At this moment, he was only a few meters away from the craggy ground below. As for Shan Yi-su's figure, he had already been completely buried by the falling rocks from the giant peak. Mo Lien pondered silently as he hovered in that direction. If his conjecture was correct, it seemed that he could only leave this place by finding where the formation disk had sunk and shattering it. Otherwise, he would be trapped here by the formation disk suction force. Prince Mo raised his hand and released 2 golems. He coldly said, "Follow me." My Chiao section break, my good granddaughter, don't resent your great-grandfather for nagging. It's mainly because you don't like to talk, right? The old man followed closely behind Xiao Mu the entire time as he prattled on. You said that old woman from the Holy Water sect is your grandmaster. Then in that case, we already had a rather deep relationship back when we were in the Holy Water sect. After all, this old man also guided that old woman back then. Speaking of which, I can be considered half a master to that old woman. The old man smugly clasped his hands behind his back and faced the sky. Seeing Arbor abruptly turn around to stare at him, the old man reflexively crossed his arms in front of his chest and stammered, "Gunna, don't throw explosion talismans again. I'm telling you. My Morning Sun Pavilion has been passed down for many years. It can't withstand your careless throwing of explosion talismans. If you don't use these explosion talismans well and it attacks Morning Sun Pavilion, the entire Morning Sun Pavilion's barrier will collapse. Then what will great-grandfather give you to inherit in the future? Don't you think so? You old geezer, it's like you haven't spoken to anyone in several hundred years. Why are you so garrulous?" Xiao Mu turned around and continued walking forward. She passed through the bamboo forest and stopped beside a stream. Hey! The old man hastily jogged through her side and said indignantly, "Child, how can you talk about great-grandfather like that? I'm telling you, it's not that great-grandfather is long-winded. You are the one who doesn't talk much." Xiao Mu cast him a sidelong glance and chuckled. The old man clasped his hands behind his back and said happily, "I've waited for so many years, and I've finally waited for you. In the future, I'll leave Chaoyang Restaurant to you." "What do you mean?" Arbor turned his head and glanced at him. The old man blew his beard and glared. "You still don't understand. You have my universal jade talisman in your hand. As long as it's a treasure ground with a talisman array that I set up, you can enter it. This?" Arbor lifted his wrist, and a round jade bracelet appeared in front of the old man's eyes. The old man looked at the pine and cypress carved on the jade bracelet and sighed. He stroked his beard and said, "Back then, this old man carved it bit by bit. This jade bracelet can open all the immortal abodes that the old man left on the divine land. How is it, my dear grandson? Do you feel the bliss of a pie falling from the sky?" Arbor shook his head. "You experts like to use some immortal abodes that are of little value to lure people into working for you. After taking your benefits, I naturally have to work for you." Arbor glanced at him coldly. "Unfortunately, I don't have time. I don't deserve a reward for nothing. Those things, I feel like they're hot to the touch, so I don't want them." The old man suddenly had the urge to vomit blood. What's going on? Children these days are actually so hard to deceive. Chapter 3600. Back then, if this old man was willing to announce in the 3 states that he wanted to take in a personal disciple, who knew how many people would break their heads and cry, begging to hug his thigh. He didn't expect to meet this little girl today, but he was defeated again and again. Could it be that this old man had to cry and beg her to accept his big gift? The old man's expression became slightly serious, and he coughed. "You're a child of Mu Tsang's bloodline." He didn't expect Mu Tsang, that serious child, to be able to teach such a cunning fox and fiery little girl. It was a bit rare. "My name is Arbor." Arbor coldly interrupted the old man and said indifferently. "What?" The old man was just a wisp of soul, so of course, he couldn't understand so many things. When he heard Lord Jojo's surname, he was stunned and couldn't help but ask, "You're not a child of my Mu family?" "Impossible." He immediately denied it himself. "This old man can feel the pure power of the Mu family's bloodline in you. You must be from the direct line of Mu Tsang's bloodline." And this child's bloodline power was mixed with a strong water spirit power. You should be the little girl born from the marriage between my family and the Long family. Your mother should be from the Sea Dragon clan of Forgetfulness River. How can your surname be Chiao? You're a child of my Mu family. The old man rolled his eyes in annoyance and interrupted Arbor's words. He continued to talk to himself. I don't care, you're a child of my Mu family. Your great-grandfather's good grandchild, don't try to deny it. It's no use even if you don't admit it. We have the bloodline talisman, we can make you show your true form in minutes. Arbor rolled her eyes. Show her true form. Did he think she was a snake demon? Chiao Mu grumpily threw the old man a cold glance before squatting down and using her hand to touch the small stream in front of her. TSK, the water was cool and clear. It really felt like a real stream and not a scene created by spirit power. Child. The old man simply pulled out a small stool from his inner world and sat beside Arbor. He said earnestly, let me tell you, I don't have any requirements for you. I don't want you to do anything or do anything. These, and those, the things in Chaoyang restaurant, I'll give them all to you. In the past, a great-grandfather excavated many grotto heavens and immortal abodes in the 3 prefectures. They were treasured lands of the divine realm. As long as you get close to that area, the bracelet will sense it and lead you to it. Gold, silver, and treasures are nothing. Talismans and medicinal pills are just appetizers. The most important thing is that my great-grandfather had once excavated a holy stone vein. The old man said complacently and happily. But you don't have to worry. I've sealed the holy vein with 18 layers of talisman formations. Ha 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 ha. Apart from the 2 of us, no one else can enter. Arbor glanced at him. You're so rich, and you've excavated so many things. You even have the existence of a holy vein. Why don't you use it to support your family? The old man blew his beard and glared. This bunch of unworthy bastards, they only know how to think about this old man's ancestral property. They don't work hard and don't learn well. They only want to live off their elders. No, no, no. Your great-grandfather's good grandchild. I'll leave all my things to you. I won't give them a single cent. The old man waved his hand and chuckled as he dragged the stool to Arbor's side. Chapter 3601. Good grandson, you can tell great-grandpa about your grandmaster-grandmother now, right? Back then, I had a long talk with this elderly lady for 3 days and nights. We discussed the sword, the Tao, and the great Tao of cultivation. That old woman was actually very perceptive. She was just hilarious and refused to return to the divine province no matter what. As he spoke, the old man sighed with a distressed expression. That's right, how is that old woman now? Arbor turned his small face and gazed deeply at him. Many years ago, the 6 prefectures led people to encircle and annihilate the Holy Water sect. My grandmaster self-detonated and her soul scattered in order to protect the many senior sisters as they evacuated. The old man started wailing. Although Arbor really wanted to mock this old man, he couldn't laugh in the end. He only said aloofly, I've already avenged the 6 prefectures. None of the people who encircled and annihilated my holy water sect had a good ending. They didn't even have the chance to have their souls scattered. Arbor said coldly, because I want to restrain their living souls and make them slaves and servants for generations to come. I want them to go through water and tread on fire for my holy water sect's future. I want them to live a life worse than death. Even the old man couldn't help but cast a sidelong glance at his cold tone. Even his soul body felt a sudden chill. In reality, there were many people like Lu Yizhi who had been forcefully refined into a golem. A portion of them had been left by Mo Lien's side, while the other portion had been left inside the holy water sect at Rosy Cloud's peak. "Good grandson, did you want to mock your great-grandpa just now?" Arbor silently glanced at him. The old man heaved a long sigh. "Back then, your grandmaster insisted on staying in the lower star domain and took in so many female disciples from impoverished families. She devoted her entire mind and body to establishing the holy water sect. I want her to travel with me, but that's only if she's willing, right?" Arbor cast him a disdainful glance. "Did you mention it?" The old man sat there motionlessly as if he had been struck by lightning. "You didn't even ask. How would you know what she was thinking?" Jojo continued to mercilessly stab the old man in the heart. "But what's the point of saying all this now? The past is the past. You can't go back," Arbor said coldly. In fact, she despised those indecisive people the most. They would just say whatever they wanted to say. Wasn't it annoying to be hesitant and nervous? You said that if you were rejected, you would only be hurt once. You should make a decision. If you don't say anything, who knows what you're thinking? If Jojo's lotus was also this meek and weak, even after 10,000 years, Lord Jojo wouldn't take a liking to him. Lord Xiao Qiao had clearly forgotten that when the two of them first met, His Highness the Crown Prince was able to completely read her thoughts. There was no barrier in their communication at all. His granddaughter's way of stabbing him was too unkind. However, the old man had nothing to say in his grief. The old man seemed to have suddenly stopped his chatterbox heart. He sat beside her in a daze and stared blankly at the stream. "Good grandson, do you have wine? You're just a spirit body. You can't drink wine." Arbor expressionlessly struck a blow. The old man instantly revealed a bitter expression. "Can't I smell the wine?" Arbor casually waved her hand, and a pot of chrysanthemum wine appeared in her hand. Chapter 3602. Casually placing the wine jug on the ground, Arbor stood up. "I've been here long enough. Can I go out now?" The old man picked up the wine jug and kept sniffing the chrysanthemum brew with his nose. He was originally intoxicated, but when he heard the little fellow's words, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. "How long have you been here? How long has it been? Do you know how long it took for those people to come in before they could reach the floor you're on?" Arbor blinked. "Pick out the location of your talisman and break it. Won't you be able to go upstairs? Do you think everyone is like you, a little pervert who can use talisman energy to sense the location of my talisman?" The old man blew his beard and glared. "This old man set up this Chaoyang restaurant to test my Mu family's descendants. Who knew that they're all disappointing? Everyone just wants to get some benefits. None of them can catch this old man's eye." Arbor glanced at him expressionlessly. "My big brother isn't that kind of person. Don't make him sound like those hedonistic sons of the Mu family." "Who's your big brother?" "My big brother, Mu Xingqian." "Oh." Apparently, the old man had some impression of Mu Xingqian. "It's that kid who reached the 58th floor. He's not bad, but his talent isn't as good as yours." Sir Jojo glanced at the old man. "How many people do you think have talent like mine in this world?" The old man was stunned. He obviously didn't expect the little girl to say such conceited words. You don't know what modesty is." The old man asked speechlessly. "This girl can't be praised too much. Just like this, she wants to go to heaven. Being overly modest is just being hypocritical." Arbor glanced at him and kicked the stool under his butt. "I'm going to continue now. Do you want to follow me?" Although the old man said that Chaoyang restaurant was given to her, she decided to continue to show the Mu family her strength. She wanted her name Arbor to be passed down on the stone tablet for tens of thousands of generations, crushing everyone in the Mu family. Of course I want to. The old man quickly jumped up and followed her all the way to the track. I'm telling you. This Chaoyang restaurant is now yours. If you do it yourself, you'll be destroying your own things. It's fine if you can jump out of the talisman, but don't destroy it. It wasn't easy for me to make these core array talismans to maintain the hundreds of arrays inside and outside the morning sun in. If you want to destroy everything, I won't let you off. The old man muttered as he followed Lady Qiao Qiao toward the barrier. After breaking through the barrier of the 58th level, the scenery before him changed abruptly. At this moment, Mu Tsang, Mu Jingfeng, and the others, who were burning with anxiety, suddenly discovered that the horizontal line flickering with red light on the stone tablet had begun to move again after waiting for about an hour. Let's go. Miss Jojo is starting again. Heavens, it's only been a short while, and she's already broken through the 58th level. Is this person still human? Mu Ro Yen struggled to get up and slapped the stone tablet as she shouted sternly, "Grandfather, father, aren't you going to think of a way to open the door to Chaoyang restaurant?" Arbor is chasing after Patriarch Chaoyang inside. Everyone looked at each other in dismay and stared at the second young miss with an extremely strange gaze. Did second young miss injure her head in Chaoyang restaurant? Chapter 3603. Even if there was only a wisp of the patriarch's soul inside, with Miss Jojo's skinny arms and legs, how could she chase after the patriarch? Seeing that everyone was looking at her like that, Mu Ro Yen hurriedly pulled Mu Ro Yen aside. "Sister, tell us. Tell us. You saw it with your own eyes, right? That Arbor must have really gone crazy. He caused a ruckus in Chaoyang restaurant and even chased after the patriarch all the way. Although we were a few floors below, we could still hear it clearly. At that time, Arbor chased after the patriarch and threw explosion talismans at him, and the patriarch was still screaming." Everyone looked at each other as if they were in a fantasy. They looked at each other silently and saw a hint of disbelief in each other's eyes. What kind of joke was this? He chased after the patriarch and threw explosion talismans at him, beating him until he screamed? Why did it feel like child's play? Mu Royan's little face was cold as she stomped her feet. I don't know the details, but Arbor must have hit our patriarch Chaoyang. Mu Jingfeng glanced at his father and coughed. Father, look, this. What should we do? The corner of Mu Tsang's eyes twitched, and he instantly felt a little tired. Raising his hands to push his forehead, Mu Tsang said in a low voice, "Come, all the elders gather together. Let's see if we can open Chaoyang restaurant's main door a little. Jing Feng and I will go in to take a look." Yes. All the elders of the Mu family responded in unison. Father, I'll go in with you. Mu Jingrui interjected worriedly. Mu Tsang turned back to look at his youngest son and nodded with a smile. That's good. Then, everyone, come. Work together to open a crack in Chaoyang restaurant. Jing Feng, Jingrui, and I will go in to see what's going on. Yes. All the elders instantly came forward and formed a large circle. One by one, they reached out and placed their hands on each other's backs. At the same time, they gathered their accumulated spiritual energy on Old Master Mu, who was standing at the front. Old Master Mu pushed out a palm and imprinted it on the empty space in front of him. A ripple appeared in front of him, and a translucent barrier appeared in the middle. The old man and the others worked together to tear a small gap in the barrier. In the blink of an eye, Mu Tsang called out to his two sons and flashed into the crack at the same time, stepping into Chaoyang restaurant's territory. Mu Tsang had just said, Mu clan disciple Mu Tsang greets old ancestor Chaoyang. Just then, he heard a delicate reprimand coming from the wind. You old man, didn't you say that you would give them all to me? How can you let people in so casually? My good grandson, how would I know that someone would suddenly barge in? You call the shots here, you call the shots. If you don't want to see them, just kick them out. Nonsense. I'm so far away from them. How am I supposed to kick them? Sir Jojo yelled unhappily. My dear grandson, all you have to do is to recite the name of one of them and kick them. Mu Jingfeng instantly had a bad premonition. Before he could make a sound, he heard a rustling sound in front of him. Before he could take a defensive posture, he felt a pain in his chest. It really felt like he had been kicked heavily, and he was sent flying by a huge force. At this moment, a group of elders was sitting cross-legged outside, conserving their energy and regulating their breathing. In a while, they would have to open the crack in Chaoyang restaurant's door again to bring the family head and the rest out. Chapter 3604. Who knew the patriarch, who had only gone in for 3 seconds, was sent flying out of the barrier. It was as if he had been kicked out of the barrier. His butt landed heavily on the ground. Everyone was dumbfounded. No one could make a sound for a long time. Mu Jingfeng's butt hurt even more, his chest hurt even more, and his face hurt even more. He could not speak for a while. Still, Mu Jingshua reacted the quickest and immediately cried out, "Io, boss, what's going on? You were kicked out by our family's old ancestor, right?" The Mu brothers speechlessly looked at him at the same time. This 6th brother's mouth was the worst. Whatever came to his mind, he would spout and make jokes the moment he opened his mouth. What happened? Mu Jingshua hurried forward to help his eldest brother up, but who knew that Mu Jingfeng would fling his hand away with a sullen face. Cough, big brother. The 4th brother, Mu Jingshao, stepped forward to help Mu Jingfeng. Seeing his ashen face and thick smoke rising from the top of his head, he did not know what to say to smooth things over for a moment. Mu Jingfeng's lips were tightly pursed, and he was simply unwilling to say anything. If everyone thought that he was kicked out by old ancestor Zhaoyang, his reputation would still be slightly better. If others were to find out that he, Mu Jingfeng, was kicked out of Chaoyang restaurant by that unfilial daughter, then he would really have no place to hide his old face. His anger toward Arbor was practically bursting. If it weren't for the fact that these people were present, he would have wished for nothing more than to enter Morning Sun restaurant again, capture Qiao Mu, and ruthlessly whip her. This unfilial daughter actually dared to treat her father like this. Was there still any law? Was there any justice in this world? If the heavens had eyes, they should send down 100 huge lightning bolts to destroy this unfilial daughter. Mu Jingfeng was extremely indignant. After standing up, his expression remained unchanged. It's nothing. You guys continue to stand guard here. When Arbor comes out later, inform me. After saying that, he immediately pushed through the crowd and left in a huff. How could he still have the face to continue staying here? Just by looking at the strange smiles in his brother's eyes, he felt that he couldn't continue to stay here. How could a prideful person like him endure this kind of humiliation? His hatred for Qiao Mu had truly reached a peak. At this moment, Mu Tsang and Mu Jingrui finally recovered from their shock in Chaoyang restaurant. He cupped his fists at the air in front of him and said respectfully, "Mu Tsang greets old ancestor Zhaoyang. What are you two doing here?" Old ancestor Zhaoyang was no longer the talkative old man he had been when he was talking to Arbor. A big, solemn face suddenly appeared out of thin air in front of Mu Tsang and Mu Jingrui. With a face full of resentment, he said, "I previously said that only my Mu family's younger generation can enter this Chaoyang restaurant. What are you two doing here? Get out." "Yes, yes." Mu Tsang repeatedly said, "Ancestor, are you all right? What could possibly happen to me?" Forefather Chaoyang snapped. "Get out of here." Don't obstruct my good grandson from climbing the stairs. Mu Tsang and his son Mu Jingrui exchanged glances. Mu Jingrui promptly bowed and hesitated before saying, "Ancestor, Jojo is still young and has a reclusive personality. Her actions are a bit out of line. If she has offended you in any way, I hope you won't hold it against her." "What nonsense are you spouting?" Chapter 3605. Patriarch Chao Yang revealed a protective expression and grumpily scolded Mu Jingrui, "You're the one who's eccentric and out of line. My good granddaughter just doesn't like to talk, that's all. She's smart and quick-witted, who knows how many tens of thousands of times more outstanding than you people. Hurry and scram. Don't obstruct my good granddaughter from climbing the stairs. I'm afraid my good granddaughter is going to break the record for the stone tablet in front of my Chao Yang pavilion." Thinking of this, the old man's large face hanging in the air smiled until all his wrinkles were exposed. Mu Jingrui looked at Patriarch Chao Yang strangely, then turned back to look at his father and quietly muttered, "Doesn't seem like it." "What doesn't seem like it?" Patriarch Chao Yang instantly scolded him in annoyance, "You brat, speak properly and say it louder." Mu Jingrui was instantly speechless and exchanged glances with his father. Mu Tsang awkwardly coughed, That, Patriarch Chao Yang, it's a misunderstanding, this is a misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding?" Patriarch Chao Yang's face was full of sharpness as he unhappily asked, "What? Did you guys forcefully open Chao Yang Pavilion's door and barge in, or did something really happen? Since you came in, why didn't you tell this old man clearly? Hurry and speak." Mu Tsang's mouth involuntarily twitched as he stammered, It's the two granddaughters that you kicked out just now. They're worried about your safety." The more Mu Tsang spoke, the more he felt that he was a bit retarded if he said everything in front of Patriarch Chao Yang. Those two children's paths in this lifetime could be considered to have come to an end. Nothing, Patriarch." Mu Tsang quickly shook his head and coughed lightly, saying, Since Patriarch is fine, then we'll go out first." Mu Tsang was about to contact the elders outside to tear open the crack in the barrier and let the father and son out. Unexpectedly, Patriarch Chao Yang's large head suddenly floated down. His large illusory face pressed down on the father and son's heads just like that, his eyes staring straight at them. To be honest, this appearance was indeed a bit frightening. The father and son looked at each other, feeling goosebumps rising in their hearts. Old ancestor." Mu Jingrui braced himself and called out. "Finish what you just said." Old ancestor Chao Yang's face was full of anger. "Tell me, what did they say after they left?" These two girls, this old man's eyes were extremely sharp, and he could tell at a glance that these two girls were not good people. Those who entered Chao Yang restaurant came in through the back door. Originally, the old ancestor was a little disheartened because he hadn't seen many satisfactory disciples in recent years. After all these years, the Mu family was probably getting worse with each generation. This Chaoyang restaurant could only be used as a place for future disciples to dig for treasures. He would just let the two girls pick whatever they wanted and leave. Who would have known that the aptitude of these two girls was so poor? They were the two with the worst aptitudes that he had seen over the years. It would be strange if such a talent was arranged to enter Chaoyang brothel. Looking at how they had spent so much effort wandering around the second or fourth floor, in comparison, there was a little freak who had just entered Chaoyang restaurant and could go up to the 18th floor in one go. There really was no harm without comparison, and the old ancestor became even angrier when he did. In his anger, he gave each of the two girls a kick. Chapter 3606. These two kicks caused Mu Ruyan and Mu Royun to be kicked out of Chaoyang restaurant by the forefather. The forefather didn't expect that these two girls with evil intentions would dare to spread rumors outside and stir up trouble. This was simply preposterous. Thus, when he got angry, Mutsang and Mu Jingrui felt a bit of pressure from the bottom of their hearts. Speak. Seeing that the forefather was about to get angry, Mu Jingrui didn't dare to hide anything. He hurriedly recounted everything that Mu Ruyan and Mu Royun had said. Ruyan said that you've been yelling the whole way that you're going to betray your master and exterminate your ancestors. She was worried about your safety, that's why she had us rush over so urgently to take a look. After saying that, Mu Jingrui also felt that this matter was a bit unreliable. Seeing the forefather's intimate attitude toward Arbor, he probably treated Arbor much better than any of the family's juniors. It wasn't like Arbor would really chase after the forefather, right? Moreover, with the forefather's current cultivation, even if 3 to 5 little Arbor came, they wouldn't be able to touch the forefather's soul in the slightest, right? They had all been tricked by Mu Ruyan and Mu Royun and ran in to get beaten up. Mu Jingrui took a deep breath and returned to his senses. He hurriedly said, "Please calm your anger, forefather." Mu Tsang also recovered at this time. He was outside earlier because he was worried that with his granddaughter's temper, she might really do something to betray her master and exterminate her ancestors. Now that he thought about it carefully, although this granddaughter of his was very cold and cheerless, her character was very good. He should have trusted her. Mu Tsang hurriedly cupped his hands and shouted, "Forefather, this disciple was muddle-headed. Please forgive me. This disciple will go out now." "Of course you're muddle-headed," Forefather Chaoyang shouted irritably. "The Mu family is really getting worse with each generation in your hands." Forefather Chaoyang snorted coldly. "This old man will go out with you. I have something to announce while I'm at it." Mu Tsang instantly broke out in cold sweat. Forefather. Forefather Chaoyang coldly glanced at Mu Tsang and Mu Jingrui. "If the Mu family is left to you to manage, it will decline. The most outstanding disciples of the Mu clan have all changed their names. What did you do? Is it because I haven't been on the continent for decades that you don't even have the brains to do things? The Long family was originally our ally, and now that our relationship has become like this, you all have an inescapable responsibility." Mu Tsang's face was immediately filled with shame. He lowered his head and cupped his hands. "Yes, old ancestor is right." Forefather Chaoyang snorted. "If you hadn't chosen the wrong patriarch, how could the family have ended up like this? I can't help but feel angry when I see your foul faces." Forefather Xiaoyang scolded Mu Tsang the moment he opened his mouth. There was nothing old Master Mu could do. After all, old Master Mu was the most prestigious old master in the history of the Mu family. If he scolded him, then so be it. Let the old man vent his anger, then everything will probably be fine. Let's go. Old ancestor Chaoyang snorted and waved his hand. "I'll go with you." Mu Tsang immediately smiled bitterly and exchanged glances with Mu Jingrui before nodding repeatedly. Now that he followed the old ancestor out, there was no need for the elders outside to work hard to open the Chaoyang pavilion's door. The two followed behind old ancestor Chaoyang. As soon as they went out, old ancestor Chaoyang's wrinkled face enlarged and appeared above everyone's head. Chapter 3607. Who was the one who spread rumors in the clan? Who said that I was chased and beaten by my granddaughter? Ancestor Chaoyang roared as soon as he went out. Mu Royan and Mu Royun were so scared that they rolled on the ground. They didn't expect that Ancestor Chaoyang's soul could still come out of the Chaoyang pavilion. "Greetings, greetings, Ancestor." The two sisters hurriedly crawled forward and respectfully kowtowed in front of Ancestor Chaoyang. Ancestor Chaoyang didn't care about their respect at all and continued to glare at them. Shameless! How dare you make up lies and slander my reputation? Did he not care about his reputation? If word got out that he was chased and beaten by his granddaughter with an explosion talisman, wouldn't he feel embarrassed? Ancestor! Ancestor, please spare our lives. Ancestor, please spare our lives. Mu Ro Yen and Mu Ro Yun were so scared that their hair stood on end. They didn't expect that Ancestor Chao Yang would really come out of the pavilion to settle the score with them. So it was indeed Mu Ro Yen and Mu Ro Yun who were spouting nonsense. The Mu clan disciples all talked at once and whispered. Like I said, Ancestor is a senior expert. How could he be chased and beaten by Miss Jojo? Everyone nodded in agreement. Their eyes were still filled with disdain as they looked coldly at Mu Ro Yen and Mu Ro Yun. The good days of these two sisters could be considered to have come to an end. Now that they had offended Ancestor Chao Yang, not to mention that their concubine couldn't protect them, even the patriarch wouldn't be able to settle this matter completely. Mu Ro Yun was slightly smarter than her sister. When she realized that the situation wasn't right, she hurriedly kowtowed and begged for mercy. Her head hit the limestone floor and made a thumping sound. Ancestor, Ancestor, I was wrong. I shouldn't have listened to my sister's words. I didn't know the truth and spoke casually and tarnished Ancestor's reputation. Mu Ro Yun's words immediately pushed the blame to her sister, Mu Ro Yen. Mu Ro Yen was instantly flabbergasted. She turned back to look at her and hurriedly kowtowed. Matriarch, Matriarch, this has nothing to do with me. Old Ancestor Zhao Yang was too lazy to listen to their bickering. He waved his hand and said, as a disciple of the Mu family, if you harbor evil intentions, you will not be able to achieve great things in the future. Mu Tsang, from tomorrow onwards, send these two disciples out of the main family. Let them go to a barren land to temper their temperament. Mu Tsang smiled bitterly and nodded. He cupped his hands and replied, yes. Since the ancestor had spoken, he naturally had to do as he was told. Mu Ro Yen and Mu Ro Yun were completely dumbfounded. Did the patriarch mean that he was going to chase them out of the imperial capital and send them to a remote place where even the chickens wouldn't lay eggs or birds wouldn't shit? The two sisters, Mu Ro Yen and Mu Ro Yun, no longer cared about fighting each other. They wept bitterly and kowtowed as they begged for mercy. Arbor, who was climbing the stairs in Morning Sun Pavilion, didn't know that the ancestor's words had dealt with two people she hated the most. She didn't know how much time had passed, but Arbor felt that the scenery in front of her had changed many times. The people outside the pavilion had gone from shock and petrification to numbness. Before today, if someone had told them that someone could climb the entire 90th floor of Morning Sun Pavilion in one go, they wouldn't have believed it even if they were beaten to death. Today, reality gave them a resounding slap in the face. It blinded everyone's dog eyes. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.